This is the moment that changes her destiny forever as she waits in a grand silent room. Her heart pounds with dread because opening this door means her absolute doom. Memories of agonizing physical abuse from her family flash through her mind. She recalls the endless labor and torment she endured just to survive. Her mother cruelly demands she put on a happy face for her upcoming sale. She despairs over her powerless existence as a mere tool for others. Her mother mockingly praises her birth as the savior of their fallen house. A chilling gratitude echoes as the final preparations are made. Trapped like a caged bird, her eyes flare with sudden deep resentment. A single tear falls as she remembers her only source of comfort. The serene sky reminds her of the one she loved dearly. She pictures her beloved fluffy white puppy running freely in the grass. She wonders where her precious companion could possibly be at this moment. Sudden footsteps echo down the corridor, shattering her quiet thoughts. The grand doors creak open, exposing her to the blinding light outside. She sits trembling at the massive, empty table, waiting for her fate. Heavy boots approach her, filling the silent hall with tension. A commanding, elegant man steps forward and speaks her name. She cringes and trembles in fear as his shadow looms over her. He utters her full name, sealing her presence in this terrifying new world. She looks up to see a striking, white-haired man standing before her. The powerful noble pauses as he observes her fragile state. He gently asks why she is crying, his voice unexpectedly soft. He asks if she truly fails to recognize him after everything. Confused and startled, she demands to know what he means. He reaches out a steady hand toward her tear-stained face. She flinches and braces herself, entirely unaware of the truth. He gently brushes her hair aside, whispering his true identity. Her golden eyes widen in absolute shock as reality starts to bend. The white-haired man smiles warmly, revealing he is her lost puppy, Momo, leaving her to face the staggering truth. Years earlier, Liliana is violently summoned by her abusive household. She desperately clutches her chest, bearing the harsh brand of a fallen noble. The cold wooden stairs creak under the weight of her tormentors. Her brother yells at her for not responding to his summons instantly. He confronts her aggressively, ordering her downstairs on their mother's behalf. He violently grabs her collar as she begs him to release her. He smiles mockingly, asserting his dominance over his powerless sister. He throws her to the floor, remembering he must keep her undamaged. He warns her that she is only safe because of her status as a Sero. He leaves her with a final cold command to get downstairs immediately. But left alone on the floor, she weeps over her miserable treatment. An oppressive sense of isolation washes over her as she cries in secret. She slowly walks down the wooden steps, lured by a rich aroma. A lavish feast of meat, cheese, and soup sits on the table. She enters the room hesitantly, asking her mother why she was summoned. Her mother tells her to sit down and join them for the meal. Stunned, Liliana points out she has never been allowed to eat with them. Her father coldly tells her to sit before the food gets cold. Her brother violently shoves her toward the table, demanding she obey. She stares at the feast, realizing this bizarre kindness hides a dark trap that could ruin her life. Sitting before a sudden lavish feast, Liliana feels suffocated by the sudden change in her family's behavior. She knows her abusers would never act with kindness unless a dark trap lay in wait. Her father breaks the silence, coldly demanding that she start eating immediately. Trembling under their gaze, Liliana hesitantly lifts her spoon to take a bite. Her brother suddenly explodes with rage, threatening to force-feed her violently. Her father quickly intervenes, warning the brother to control himself. Shrugging it off, her brother laughs, mockingly reminding them not to ruin the merchandise. To maintain the bizarre charade, the mother pushes more food onto Liliana's plate. Her father acts deceptively gentle, telling her she must eat plenty to gain weight. The sinister truth emerges as he demands she look healthy for her upcoming buyers. He shamelessly declares that she should be happy to finally be useful to the family. Her brother and mother chime in, demanding she thank them for matching her with her fate. Liliana realizes they are utterly thrilled to sell her off like a prized animal. Her mother demands she remember them, while Liliana knows they only care about her looks. The luxury food on her tongue suddenly tastes absolutely repulsive, making her physically sick. She realizes this fine meal is far more disgusting than any garbage she ate to survive. Her heart shatters as she realizes they will never show a shred of remorse. Clenching her teeth, she silently begs them to stop their hypocritical lies. Suddenly, her branded chest begins to glow with an intense, raging light as her anger boils over. Her golden eyes flare with pure resentment as she refuses to take their abuse any longer. With a deafening scream, Liliana unleashes a massive burst of raw, crackling power. The violent shockwave tears through the dining room, shattering the feast instantly. Her mother and brother scream in absolute terror as the magic engulfs the room. Her father panics in horror, completely blindsided by her sudden manifestation of power. Staring coldly through the smoke, Liliana vows she will never forgive them. Far away, a powerful hand turns the page of a secret document detailing her sale. The white-haired noble demands to know where this newly discovered girl is located. His butler reveals she is currently held in the nearby kingdom of Verona. The butler states the family is demanding a staggering 50,000 gold coins. He explains how the fallen noble family shamelessly offered to sell their own daughter. The butler adds that her father immediately threw a rage and demanded her disposal. The white-haired noble smiles coldly, disgusted by the father's sheer greed and heartless betrayal. Determined to intervene, he rises and asks how long the journey will take. Upon hearing it is a 4-day journey, he makes a decisive choice. He commands his forces to prepare for departure at first light tomorrow morning. This crucial rescue mission is fueled by the harsh laws of their world social hierarchy. Powerless commoners are dubbed quattros, while fake nobles created the title of tres. Only a chosen few hold the incredible ability to wield magical mana. Spellcasting duos and physically devastating unos reign supreme over this world. Yet the powerful unos burn away their own lifespans to maintain their supreme strength. This tragic fate leaves them desperate for a legendary savior to heal them. Only a rare Sero can awaken an uno's true power and restore their lifespan. A sudden realization pieces the dark history of their world together. Back in the mansion, Liliana's collarbone brand glows as she feels the magic coursing through her. She finally recognizes the truth. She is one of those legendary, coveted Seros. Waking up on the floor, she wonders if she subconsciously triggered her dormant power. Knowing her family is currently incapacitated, Liliana realizes this is her only chance to escape. She reaches under her bed and opens a hidden chest to retrieve her belongings. Clutching a precious golden keepsake, she prepares to flee into the night. She fondly remembers the kind woman who once gave her this chest to protect her. A single choice can rewrite your entire destiny, and for young Liliana, that moment arrives with a mysterious wooden box. As she looks up at her kind aunt, she curiously asks about the unexpected gift she has just received. Her aunt holds her close in a warm, sorrowful embrace, apologetically explaining that she will not be able to visit the estate for a very long time. Looking up with concern, Liliana asks if she will be terribly busy, and her aunt sadly confirms she must travel far to the western continent. Within the box lies a beautiful golden locket and shimmering gemstones, as her aunt's voice urges her to take these treasures and flee her abusive family if she ever gets the chance. Her aunt smiles gently, advising her of a secret haven called Cardell where she will finally be safe from harm. Liliana clutches the heavy wooden box in terror, tearfully admitting she is too afraid to escape on her own, though her aunt reassures her that there is no need to rush. Her aunt looks down at her with deep affection, expressing her earnest hope that Liliana will escape her cruel household and find genuine happiness. Holding her hands tightly, her aunt asks for a solemn promise that she will flee the moment she finds her courage, as it is her only path to true freedom. Back in the present, undetermined Liliana dons a dark hooded cloak, resolutely promising herself to find a sanctuary where she can finally survive. Stepping out of the shadow of her past, she begins her solitary trek through a vast snow-covered forest. Far away, the striking white-haired noble looks surprised as he is presented with a heavy dark green fur coat. As his butler helps him into the heavy cloak, he explains that a fierce, freezing blizzard is currently sweeping through the lands of Eden. The noble freezes in place, his expression turning pale and serious at the mention of the storm. A sudden painful memory of a freezing past flashes through his mind, recalling a young boy crying out helplessly in the snow. The painful vision of a young girl collapsed face down in the freezing snow tormentingly echoes in his mind. Sensing his master's distress, the butler presents a belt filled with potions to assure him they are fully prepared for the treacherous journey. Determined to move forward, the noble decisively declares his departure despite his butler's lingering worries. He sweeps out of the grand, ornate room, leaving his loyal servant watching him with a heavy heart. A profile of his face reveals a cold, resolute gaze as he prepares to face the freezing wilderness. Shadows of dark, agonizing memories and past torment loom over him, fueling his desperate urge to intervene. He looks back with quiet resolve, admitting his uncertainty but refusing to let anything deter him from his path. Meanwhile, Liliana slowly opens her eyes inside a bumpy carriage as she is told they have finally arrived at their destination. She blinks in surprise as she is urged to look out the window at the journey's end. Peering through the glass, she catches her very first glimpse of the snowy mountain village resting in the distance. A rustic wooden post marked with ancient runes stands as the quiet gateway to this mysterious territory. She steps out into the snow, realizing this neutral land is completely free from the influence of greedy nobles and kingdoms. But just as hope begins to bloom, a rough hand suddenly grabs her shoulder from behind, shattering her brief moment of peace. An aggressive young village man confronts her fiercely, accusing her of being a dangerous spy sent by the kingdom. He glares at her with intense hostility, leaving her completely frozen in absolute terror. Shaking her violently, he demands to know where she came from as she stammers in fear. Before the situation can escalate, a stern voice suddenly commands the angry young man to step down immediately. The young man grudgingly releases his grip, leaving Liliana shaking and clutching her chest in relief. A kind elderly village elder slowly approaches, warmly asking what brings a young traveler like her to Cardell. Examining the golden keepsake in his hand, the elder realizes she was sent to them by her aunt Leshy. Liliana eagerly confirms their relationship, explaining that her aunt promised this place would offer her help. The aggressive young man, Baylor, grumbles about taking in random strangers, but the elder sternly orders him to hold his tongue. Bowing politely, the elder apologizes for his grandson's defensive behavior and explains they must remain cautious of outsiders. Introducing himself as Walter, the elder of Cardell, he smiles warmly and gently asks for her name. She hesitates, starting to say her abusive family's name before catching herself. Desperate to leave her painful past behind, she asks him to simply call her Lily. Walter accepts her simple name and kindly asks what exactly she needs from their village. Clenching her hands in her skirt, she explains she came seeking a legendary sanctuary that protects the oppressed. Looking up with pleading golden eyes, she desperately asks if there is any way she can stay. She sits across from the two men in the cozy, warm room, waiting anxiously for their final judgment. Lily quickly promises to keep her head down and ensure she never becomes a burden to their community. Desperate for safety, she pleads that even a short stay of a few months would be enough to save her. The elder smiles gently, indicating his full understanding and acceptance of her situation. Walter reassures her that she can stay as long as she likes in a cozy cottage of her own, leaving her completely stunned. Tears of relief well in her golden eyes as she asks how they can show such kindness to a total stranger. Walter smiles warmly, explaining that because her aunt once saved their village, they will gladly protect her now. A life of endless suffering finally meets a single ray of hope as a warm hand reaches out to rewrite her tragic destiny. This gentle touch seals a silent vow, confirming that this hidden village will forever protect the weak and helpless. The compassionate elder offers a warm, grandfatherly smile that instantly washes away years of cold, agonizing abuse. Tears of overwhelming relief escape her golden eyes as she realizes her nightmare has finally come to an end. Sitting in the quiet warmth of the cabin, she pours her heart out in absolute gratitude to her savior. Meanwhile, far away in the frozen wilderness, a blonde warrior laughs off the brutal fury of an unyielding blizzard. He grumbles to his companion about the freezing trek and the sheer audacity of their elusive target. Sensing a sudden shift in the icy air, the loyal companion turns back to check on his quiet master. Exhaling a frozen mist, the red-eyed noble calmly reassures him that he is completely fine. He reaches for a healing potion on his belt, commanding his helper to investigate the dark mansion ahead. The blonde helper marches forward and pounds violently on the wooden door, demanding entry for the Eberhardt family. His aggressive shouts echo through the howling wind, demanding to know if anyone is still alive inside. While his helper makes a scene, the quiet noble downs a magical potion to restore his depleted strength. The companion suggests retreating due to the freezing storm, but his master coldly commands him to force the door open. Startled by the sudden and absolute authority in his master's voice, the helper pauses in brief hesitation. A sudden, devastating force shatters the silence, splintering the heavy wooden barricade instantly. The broken wooden door swings wildly on its hinges, revealing a dark, ominous abyss inside. Stepping into the threshold, the helper breaks into a nervous sweat as he senses something is terribly wrong. A strange, heavy purple mist hangs suspended over a completely deserted dining hall. Moving further in, he confirms that there is absolutely no sign of life left within the house. He assumes the targets have fled, but the white-haired noble warns him not to rush to easy conclusions. His sharp, red eyes narrow as he detects the faint, lingering scent of freshly prepared food. The noble decisively splits up their search, sending his helper downstairs while he ascends to the second floor. As his heavy leather boots ascend the creaking wooden stairs, a sudden powerful sensation washes over him. A sweet, intoxicating crimson aura begins to swirl through the corridor, capturing his absolute attention. He stops dead in his tracks before a closed door, recognizing a magical scent he has sought his entire life. He flings the door wide open, his heart pounding at the unmistakable presence of his destined savior. He scans the empty, glowing bedroom where a brilliant trail of pink magical energy still softly lingers. He stands frozen in absolute shock, his crimson eyes wide as he processes the staggering truth of his discovery. Suddenly, his helper's panic screams echo from below, begging him to get downstairs immediately. Rushing back down, the noble demands answers as his sweating companion frantically points toward the kitchen. There, sitting completely motionless around the dinner table, the target family is frozen in a bizarre magical trance. They analyze the lingering energy, realizing with shock that the missing girl's raw power is far greater than anticipated. The noble commands his companion to break the spell, catching the young warrior completely off guard. With a dark, commanding gaze, he reiterates his order to neutralize the lingering magic instantly. The blonde helper sweats profusely, hesitating to admit his own magical limitations to his master. He nervously gestures to his potion belt, admitting he depleted his mana during the brutal journey. The noble swiftly tosses him a recovery potion, impatiently urging him to get to work. Consuming the potion, the helper unleashes a burst of dispelling magic to break the powerful trance. The magical binding snaps instantly, forcing the frozen muscles of the captive family to suddenly release. Gasping for air, the family members widen their eyes as consciousness violently floods back into their minds. The disoriented brother stands up, frantically asking his parents what on earth just happened. The blonde companion snaps his fingers mockingly, ordering them to save their pathetic family reunion for later. Terrified, the mother and brother clutch each other as they remember their final moments with Liliana. The father turns around in a panic, demanding to know the identity of these dangerous intruders. The helper's playful face instantly turns deadly serious as he demands the location of their promised savior. He violently grabs the trembling father by his collar, demanding answers since the agreed-upon date has passed. Sweat pours down the father's face as he desperately swears that the girl vanished into thin air. Confronted with accusations of hiding her, the father shamelessly admits they only wanted to sell her for greed. Seeing their pathetic, money-hungry terror, the white-haired noble nods, confirming they are too greedy to be lying. Driven by dark obsession, the white-haired noble strides into the freezing storm. The frantic blonde helper demands to know where his master is headed, only to be coldly ordered to keep the target family under strict guard as the noble prepares to leave. His gaze turns chillingly sharp as he silently questions if the escaped girl truly believes she could ever slip away from the grasp of the powerful Everhart family. Clutching a magical potion from his belt, the red-eyed noble firmly resolves that he will never allow his destined savior to escape his reach. A sweet crimson aura swirls in his mind, urging him to track her down before her lingering magical scent completely disappears. A cool, triumphant smirk slowly plays across the white-haired noble's lips. Crimson magical energy surges around his boots, boosting his speed instantly. The noble blasts forward in a burst of speed, leaving his panicked blonde helper screaming in distress as his master vanishes into the blizzard. Meanwhile, a brown-haired girl sleeps peacefully inside a warm, cozy cabin. Smiling gently, she relishes the unfamiliar warmth and wonders how long it has been since she last enjoyed such a peaceful night. She opens her golden eyes, quietly wondering what has become of her abusive family. Remembering her frozen family, she realizes they will hunt her down the moment her magic fades, and the powerful Everhart family will surely join the search. She remembers that Cardell is an exclusive sanctuary that outsiders cannot easily breach. A mystical barrier constantly shields the hidden snowy village, ensuring her pursuers will never find her easily. She convinces herself that the Everhart family will eventually abandon their search once their money is returned, simply seeking another target instead. Staring at the sunlight filtering through the window, she dismisses the foolish hope of being his destined savior, believing it to be an impossible dream. Clinging to her blankets, she spirals into self-doubt, deeming herself far too worthless and ugly to ever deserve such a grand fate. Meanwhile, the white-haired noble stands atop a freezing, windswept mountain peak. He looks down in frustration as the howling blizzard continuously scatters her lingering scent. Dropping a magical tracker, he realizes he must locate his target before the night ends. Exhausted and sweating, the noble pushes forward, desperate to find her as quickly as possible. Overlooking the vast snowy valley, he resolves to find her before time runs out. A painful memory of a weeping white-haired boy flashes in his mind. Glowing blue magic sparkles between two young hands in the freezing snow. An oppressive, shadowy darkness begins to swallow his thoughts as malice rises, but dark, ominous aura flares around him as he swears to end her life with his own hands. His sharp gaze locks onto his destination as he utters the name of the sanctuary, Cardell. A violent shockwave of wind and snow explodes across the frozen wasteland. Dashing through the snow, he recalls his companion asking if they will bring her back to the estate. A sharp, agonizing pain forces the white-haired noble to clutch his chest. He remembers the cruel warning that love only leads to devastating loss and despair. Dark shadows of his tragic past continue to cloud his bleeding heart. Another painful memory warns him that relying on others only invites bitter betrayal and ruin. Looking at a shattered family portrait, he bitterly reflects on how weak fools rely on destiny to survive. Pulling his hood tight against the wind, he mocks the concept of their shared destined thread. Glaring with blood-red eyes, he vows to sever their unpleasant bond of destiny permanently. The peaceful, snow-covered sanctuary of Cardell Village rests silently in the distance. Panting heavily under his hood, he notes his depleted mana reserves are nearly empty, making his timely arrival extremely close. He realizes he must consume his final recovery potion to successfully cross into the village. His gloved hand quickly searches his leather pouch for the final vial. His heart sinks as he finds his pouch completely empty, suddenly remembering his companion asking for a potion earlier. A flashback reminds him of the moment he willingly threw his last potion to his blonde helper. Lacking mana, the white-haired noble suddenly loses his balance in the snow. His boots slip in the snow as his magical aura completely vanishes. He cusses himself under his hood for making such a reckless and costly mistake. Exhausted from the freezing blizzard and tracking her scent, he begins to tumble backward down the slope. He falls helplessly, filled with rage that his body is failing right in front of his destination. As a strange blue light glows on his chest, he laments his sheer stupidity in his final moments of consciousness. Nearby in Cardell, the brown-haired girl wanders into the snowy grass, certain she heard a strange noise. She looks around the empty white fields, wondering if the sound was merely her imagination, unaware of the threat lingering nearby. Just when Liliana thought she found safety in this hidden sanctuary, a chilling sound in the freezing woods threatens to shatter her peace as she stops, convinced she heard something. Standing behind a snow-dusted tree, Liliana listens closely, certain she heard the faint, desperate whimper of a crying animal nearby. Her golden eyes widen in sudden shock as she spots something unexpected amidst the harsh, snowy landscape. Moving with desperate haste, she reaches her hand down toward the freezing ground to investigate the mystery. Shivering violently beneath a blanket of fresh snow, a tiny fluffy white puppy curled in a ball fights for survival. The biting cold of the winter wilderness intensifies, heightening the stakes for the fragile life hanging in the balance. Cradling the shivering creature close, Liliana frantically wonders why such a tiny puppy would be abandoned in this freezing wasteland. Without a moment to lose, her boots rush across the pristine snow, desperately seeking warmth and shelter. Feeling the puppy's icy body against her chest, Liliana urges herself to get the helpless creature somewhere warm before it is too late. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out her name as Mr. Baylor spots her running frantically through the snow-covered pass. Shocked by her sudden appearance, Mr. Bottler questions why she is out so early in such thin clothing, while a breathless Liliana struggles to find her words. Tears well in Liliana's eyes as she desperately pleads for help, crying out that the dying puppy in her arms won't survive much longer. Clutching the fragile bundle, she explains that she found the freezing puppy abandoned in the forest while searching for fruit and simply couldn't leave her behind. With tears streaming down her face, she urgently asks if there's a local veterinarian in Cardell who can save the dying creature. Mr. Baylor contemplates the situation with deep concern, realizing that finding proper medicine will be difficult since no one in their village raises dogs. Determined to save the creature, Mr. Baylor decides to head straight to the local farm as a last resort, hoping to salvage any emergency medicine. Urging her to get inside immediately, Mr. Baylor drapes his own dark coat over her shoulders to shield her from the biting wind. Waving a reassuring hand, Mr. Baylor dashes off into the blizzard, promising to return with the medicine as quickly as possible. Wrapped in his warm coat, Liliana nods silently, her heart filled with gratitude as she watches him disappear into the snowy expanse. Hugging the small puppy tight, Liliana walks back toward the cabin, desperately praying for the fragile life in her arms. A beautiful mystical mirror adorned with fox ears and elegant purple gems reveals a regal, crowned silhouette, hinting at a hidden destiny. As she gazes at the puppy, a deep, nostalgic memory of a painful past suddenly floods Liliana's mind. She remembers her painful childhood, kneeling in the freezing snow while washing clothes under a harsh, abusive household. She wonders if this sudden memory resurfaced because that distant, agonizing day was just as freezing cold as today. The memory of her younger self shivering and gasping for breath in the relentless winter storm brings back the familiar sting of isolation. Clutching her head in pain, she remembers looking up at the gloomy ash-gray sky that perfectly matched the color of her cold, lonely world. She recalls the terrifying moment her young, exhausted body finally gave out, collapsing helplessly into the deep snow. Staring down at the puppy, she realizes the true reason this helpless creature struck a chord in her heart. They were both completely abandoned and identical in their suffering. Back in the warm cabin, the tiny puppy continues to shiver weakly, wrapped in thick cloth on the table. Sitting in the quiet room, Liliana gently cradles the wrapped bundle, wondering who could be cruel enough to abandon such a weak baby to the elements. Tears stream down her face as she hugs the puppy close, whispering a heartfelt apology that keeping her warm is all she can do. Suddenly, the cabin door is flung wide open with a loud slam, echoing Mr. Balor's frantic shout as he returns. Panting heavily but wearing a triumphant smile, Mr. Baylor holds up a glass vial, proudly announcing that he successfully secured the medicine. He explains that while the farm medicine is meant for livestock, it acts as a reliable remedy for almost any animal and will quickly reduce the puppy's fever. Liliana beams with gratitude, thanking him deeply as he urges her to skip the pleasantries and focus on administering the cure immediately. Nodding eagerly, Liliana prepares to spoon-feed the warm healing medicine to the sleeping puppy. Relief washes over the room as both of them watch the tiny puppy eagerly lap up the medicine. Smiling warmly, Mr. Baller guides her to lay the puppy down in a cozy, comfortable spot now that she has been fed. Tucking the puppy safely beneath a heavy blanket, Liliana quietly questions if this simple treatment will be enough to save her. Mr. Baller reassures her that the remedy is a renowned panacea among the village farmers, though Liliana still harbors a lingering trace of anxiety. Flashing a bright, confident smile, Mr. Baller promises to bring over a local expert who studied veterinary medicine if she remains worried. Touched by his kindness, Liliana realizes he is going out of his way to soothe her troubled mind. Blushing slightly, Mr. Baller scratches his head as Liliana thanks him again, pointing out that he must have been freezing after giving her his coat. Flustered, a comical chibi version of Mr. Baller waves his hands frantically, insisting he loves running around in the winter for exercise as Liliana giggles. Liliana's gaze shifts to a basket on the floor containing fresh bread, prompting her to ask about its contents. Mr. Baller realizes he completely forgot about the basket, explaining that he brought some fresh food for her despite his rushed morning. Looking sheepish, he admits that he brought the food as a sincere apology for his rude and careless behavior toward her the previous day. He confesses that he tends to guard himself excessively whenever a stranger arrives in their hidden village. Bowing his head deeply in a formal apology, Mr. Baller expresses his genuine regret to a surprised Liliana. Liliana gently reaches out, smiling warmly as she accepts his apology, happy that they can finally move past the hostility and build a genuine bond in this snowy sanctuary. Liliana expresses her deepest gratitude to Baller for his incredible kindness in saving the puppy. Liliana beams with a radiant, heart-melting smile of sheer relief. Baller stands completely frozen, his cheeks flushing a bright, embarrassed pink. Quickly changing the subject, Baller points out that the sleeping puppy looks far more comfortable now, sparking Liliana's immediate interest. Peering down, Liliana gladly notes the puppy is sleeping with a wonderfully peaceful expression. Gushing over the tiny creature, Liliana coos at its twitching toes as Baller warmly agrees she is incredibly adorable. Sensing his sudden hesitation, she turns back with a questioning glance. Fidgeting nervously, Baller suggests she drop the formal honorifics since they are of a similar age. He frantically waves his hands to clarify there is no deeper meaning, stammering that his informal tone makes her formal speech feel incredibly awkward. Liliana stares at him in surprised silence as he awkwardly trails off. She bursts into a soft giggle, happily agreeing to call him by his name. Flashing a bright grin, Liliana warmly invites him to call her Lily as well. Baller turns bright red once more, utterly flustered by her adorable nickname. Averting his gaze, Baller shyly agrees and calls her Lily for the very first time. Night falls silently over the cozy snow-dusted cabin in the mountains. Inside, a gentle and comforting melody hums softly in the quiet darkness. Sitting at her desk, Liliana thoughtfully ponders the perfect name for her new companion. Holding a pretty pink ribbon, she contemplates adorable names like Mongsil or Manga. She sighs softly, realizing none of the standard names feel quite right for the unique puppy. She carefully observes the puppy's incredibly short legs and tiny fluffy tail. Liliana playfully compares her new friend to a round, bouncy ball of gray fluff. A brilliant spark of inspiration hits her as she finally chooses the ultimate name. She carefully lifts the sleepy creature to tuck her in. The puppy sleeps soundly inside a cozy basket bearing a cute name tag labeled Momo. Liliana gazes down with immense affection, softly wishing her new pet sweet dreams. She tenderly whispers a final goodnight, officially naming the sleeping white puppy Momo. Suddenly, a chaotic, snowy dreamscape of a distressed white-haired woman flashes before the mind. The crying woman desperately reaches out her hand into the freezing blizzard, screaming for someone. Her blood-red eyes widen in raw panic as she screams out the name Raises in sheer agony. A sudden heavy gasp echoes through the darkness as consciousness abruptly returns. Panting frantically in the quiet shadows, he struggles to understand what just happened. Looking around the wooden room, he groggily wonders if he has ended up in a rustic barn. He panics instantly as he realizes his body refuses to move properly. He recalls casting a high-level emergency spell to transform into a small animal to recover his depleted life force. Sensing his incredibly tiny limbs, a cold sweat of dread washes over him. He bitterly curses his terrible luck upon looking down at his own chubby paws. Staring ahead in complete shock, he realizes he has actually transformed into a tiny white puppy. He notes that while his magical fever persists, his body feels much lighter and is starting to recover. Even so, he deeply laments having such an embarrassing and utterly harmless appearance. He squeezes his incredibly squishy pink paw pads in absolute disbelief and defeat. The proud noble Raises stands completely dumbfounded in his mind, unsure of how to escape this cute nightmare. He desperately tries to channel his magic, only to find his massive powers are completely sealed in this form. He grimly calculates that recovering his full strength in this state will take at least a month. He realizes his situation is critical unless he can somehow find his blonde helper, Sero, before then. Suddenly, he freezes in horror as the sleeping girl rolls over and calls him Momo in her sleep. Glancing at her, he recognizes her as the very girl who saved him from the freezing cold. He scoffingly notes how carefree she is, sleeping so soundly in this dusty, cabin-like place. Spotting his basket, he is outraged to find she has already given him the ridiculous name Momo. He wrinkles his tiny snout in annoyance, complaining about the dusty and unrefined smell of the room. Suddenly, his small nose catches a familiar scent, sending a massive shockwave of realization through his mind. A cheerful, innocent pant quickly turns into absolute horror as a devastating realization strikes his senses. In absolute disgust, the tiny creature strikes his own face in a dramatic facepalm of pure defeat. In his mind, the proud noble Raises reels from the intense shock, realizing a dog's sense of smell is 10,000 times more potent than a human's. Standing tall in his spiritual reflection, Raises commands himself to maintain composure and remember his true mission in this cabin. The annoyed puppy turns away sharply, refusing to accept his ridiculous new reality. As his tiny body trots across the floor, his regal spirit looms close behind him. Leaping down, he laments the absurd twist of fate that brought him to this specific savior. Approaching the sleeping girl, he is stunned to realize she is his fated target. Looking closely, he notices her body is severely bruised and dangerously thin, resembling a corpse. Yet, he wonders why she wears such a happy, peaceful expression in her sleep. Raises looks on with cold detachment, refusing to care about her circumstances. Enshrouded in darkness, he prepares to strike down the woman he is destined to destroy. Suddenly, she stirs in her sleep, causing the startled puppy to flinch in panic. Liliana groggily wakes up and calls out for Momo, freezing the panicking puppy in his tracks. Desperate to retreat, the puppy scrambles back, only to be scooped into Liliana's warm embrace as she rejoices over his recovery. Cradling him close, Liliana marvels at his warmth, recalling how cold and fragile he was when they first met. The puppy maintains a flat, deadpan stare while Liliana confesses how deeply she worried for his survival. Gently cuddling him, she asks him to stay by her side and sleep until morning. His proud human spirit looks down in silent conflict as Liliana promises to keep him warm. Smirking faintly, Raises yields to his physical limitations and decides to postpone his dark plans. A peaceful silence fills the room as they sleep huddled together amidst a dreamlike glow. Morning light shines over the snow-covered forest cabin as a new day begins. Beaming with joy, Liliana greets the puppy, asking if he slept well. The puppy sits on the windowsill in a bizarrely rigid human posture, casting a chilly glare. Liliana kneels to praise his improved health while his regal spirit looks on with folded arms. Human Raises fumes with rage as Liliana keeps calling him by that ridiculous name. He screams in his mind, demanding she stop calling him by that name. The furious noble points dramatically, unleashing his pent-up royal frustration. From Liliana's perspective, the puppy is just barking cutely, prompting her to assume he is extremely hungry. Liliana happily promises to cook him a delicious meal to make up for his long slumber. A sudden knock at the door interrupts them as a familiar voice calls out for her. Opening the door, Liliana finds Baylor standing outside, eager to check on the puppy and handing her a mysterious package. Liliana questions the contents of the package, and Baylor explains it is special feed meant for young farm animals. Overjoyed, Liliana thanks him warmly, relieved to finally have something to feed her tiny companion. Liliana eagerly presents a bowl filled with brown kibble, inviting Momo to enjoy his meal. Standing alongside Baylor, Liliana happily points out the food he brought for him. Staring at the bowl, the puppy trembles with absolute outrage at the thought of eating dog food. Unleashing his fury, the puppy bites Baylor's leg, leaving both humans screaming in absolute chaos. Outside the cabin, Baylor's painful cries echo while Liliana scolds the puppy for his bad behavior. As evening approaches, smoke gently rises from the cabin chimney against a colorful sunset sky. Inside, a pot of fresh ingredients boils steadily over the crackling fireplace. Stirring the pot, Liliana hopes a warm, soft meal will suit his picky palate better than the kibble. Watching her from a distance, the sweating puppy wonders what she is up to now. The puppy tilts his head, realizing his usual mealtime is long since past. Hearing a soft rustle, Liliana turns around in mild surprise. The puppy trots over, surrounded by a cute, starry aura that immediately catches her attention. Beaming warmly, Liliana asks if he came over because he is hungry, promising the food is almost ready. As she attempts to lift the heavy pot, she suddenly loses her grip and spills the boiling meal across the floor. The steaming meat lies ruined on the wooden floor, leaving Liliana crying out in pain. Fearing she hurt her companion, Liliana immediately apologizes to the puppy, completely dismayed by her clumsy mistake and unaware that this minor accident might have just pushed her dangerous roommate's patience to its absolute limit. A dark shadow of danger looms, yet the brown-haired girl expresses immense relief that her fluffy companion is completely unharmed. Liliana quickly moves to clean up the spilled mess, assuring the puppy that his meal will be ready shortly. Staring blankly at her, the puppy internally questions the girl's sanity after her clumsy accident. The puppy contemplates the physics of the sudden spell. Noting the distance of the spilled water, the puppy realizes the girl had absolutely no reason to worry about his safety. The puppy's annoyance softens into disbelief upon noticing the severe burn on the girl's hand, wondering why she cared for him over her own pain. Staring intently, the puppy's silent gaze demands to know the reason behind her selflessness, startling the brown-haired girl. Leaning forward, the tiny puppy gently licks her burned hand to soothe her pain. A warm smile spreads across Liliana's face as she softly asks if he is worried about her. Liliana gently pets his head, reassuring him that she is accustomed to dealing with such painful injuries. The comforting touch triggers a sudden, faint memory of a silver-haired boy being tenderly caressed. The vision expands to reveal a loving mother embracing her young son, Raises, amidst a freezing winter field. With a gentle smile, the mother whispers her deep, everlasting love for her young son. A glowing voice echoes, expressing profound relief over his safety. Back in reality, Liliana beams with genuine warmth as she gazes down at her small pet. The majestic spirit of Raziz looks on as Liliana calls out to her beloved puppy, Momo. An ominous darkness shifts the scene, paving the way for a deeper revelation. A mysterious, glowing message reiterates a quiet sense of relief for his safety. Eagerly presenting a fresh bowl of shredded meat, Liliana encourages Momo to enjoy a meal far better than dry kibble. Standing nearby, Liliana notices his hesitation and asks if he dislikes this food as well. Clutching her hands, Liliana grows deeply anxious about what to feed him if he rejects this meal too. The white puppy carefully leans forward to sniff the steaming dish. Liliana gasps in sudden, joyful surprise. To her absolute delight, Momo happily devours the freshly prepared food. Feeling relieved, Liliana smiles and realizes the dry kibble simply was not to his refined taste. Petting his head, she praises him warmly and promises to prepare this hot meal for him every single day. The noble spirit of Raises sighs, declaring this compliance is merely a temporary measure until his mana recovers. Liliana beams with pure, unbridled joy. While Liliana happily pets the eating puppy, the majestic spirit of Raises stands guard over her. The scene shifts to a grand snow-dusted estate adorned with dragon-embellished banners. Walking down stone steps, Sero sighs heavily, deeply annoyed by his current chore. Sero bitterly complains about having to deliver food to the prisoners. Sero contemplates simply eating the bread and potatoes himself instead of feeding them. Sero greets the terrified bearded prisoner with an indifferent salute through the iron bars. The desperate prisoners plead for their release, insisting they are the real victims and have nothing to do with the runaway girl. The prisoners beg Sero to let them go, promising to return the deposit. Sero cold-heartedly commands them to stay quiet, promising their release only when the time is right. Sero casts a chilling direct glare at the lead prisoner. Sero's fist clenches tightly in silent anger. A devastating punch shatters the silence of the dungeon. The prisoner is sent flying across the cell floor as his panicked son screams out for his father. The worried wife rushes to her unconscious husband's side, crying out in raw panic. Enshrouded in dark magic, Sero threatens to kill them if they dare play the victim again, expressing his absolute disgust for their kind. Turning away, Sero warns them that he is only holding back from beating them to death because he must await the family head's orders. With a final side glance, Sero venomously labels the crying family as absolute pieces of trash. Lighting a cigarette, Sero reflects on how they abused her for her entire life, only to hunt her down for profit the moment she became a Sero. Exhaling smoke, Sero admits that anyone would run away from such horrific treatment. Sero quietly urges Sero to run as far away as possible, warning that their family head is terrifyingly fast and strong. Sero shivers in the cold, wondering when his formidable leader will finally return. Looking out into the snowy night, Sero can only hope the family head won't have to launch a massive search party to find her. Under the cover of a crisp morning, Liliana calls out to her tiny companion, inviting him to a freshly prepared feast. The white puppy wastes no time greedily devouring the shredded meat and broccoli as Liliana showers him with warm praise. Though he eats, the proud human spirit of Raises grumpily laments the completely tasteless nature of his meal. Forced to swallow the bland vegetable, Raises mentally curses his current culinary reality. Peering through the window grid, the noble realizes with a shock that 3 whole weeks have passed since he arrived. While Liliana smiles warmly nearby, Raises reflects on how easily he adapted, with only sheer boredom left to conquer. Yet, as the puppy scratchingly relaxes, Raises confesses there is still one agonizing routine he simply cannot tolerate. Suddenly, a warm hand sweeps down, giving him absolutely no time to escape. Liliana tightly scoops him into her arms, unleashing the relentless wave of affection that serves as his ultimate daily nightmare. Snuggling him close, Liliana coos over his full, round belly, completely ignoring her pet's silent, grumpy protests. The indignant puppy growls and thrashes, only for Liliana to laugh gleefully at how much his cute squirming tickles her. High above, his fuming pride reminds him that this shameful submission is purely to recover his depleted mana. Desperate to reclaim his dignity, the proud warrior struggles in vain against her unexpectedly firm embrace. Noticing his sudden agitation, Liliana quickly apologizes and gently lowers the grumpy puppy back to the ground. Kneeling on the wooden floor, she bids him to rest well before she calls him for dinner later. As Liliana happily hums and walks away, the puppy watches her back, completely baffled by her constant joy. He recalls how she knits and wears the same threadbare clothes, surviving on terrible food despite once looking like a gaunt corpse. Yet she turns around with a bright, shining face, asking if her beloved pet was watching her knit. Her radiant, genuine smile beams with such pure warmth that it catches him completely off guard. Conflict tears at Ray's cold heart as he realizes this bizarre warmth might soon make him entirely unable to kill her. His deep contemplation is shattered when Liliana eagerly calls him over to see what she just finished making. Beaming with pride, she holds up a tiny, hand-knitted pink sweater covered in white cap patterns. Ray's stares in flat, unamused silence, internally mocking the garment as nothing more than a giant pink sock with holes. A sudden wave of icy terror washes over the noble as a horrifying realization dawns on him. A chaotic storm of panic erupts in his mind as he prays his worst fears are not about to manifest. Liliana eagerly lifts him into the air, determined to dress her small companion in her custom creation. The proud warrior thrashes and screams in silent outrage, protesting the sheer indignity of forcing clothes onto a furry animal. Mildly pleading, Liliana coaxingly reassures him that the sweater is only to keep him warm during the freezing winter. His struggles prove useless as he is forced into the tight pink sweater, sitting in defeated, miserable silence. He barks in sheer fury, wanting to rip the fabric off, while Liliana simply claps and swoons over how adorable he looks. The puppy's eyes darken with murderous promise, swearing absolute agonizing vengeance the second his magic fully returns. The cold winter night deepens, shrouding the surrounding forest in a calm, silent blue. Before retiring for the night, Liliana gently pulls him close and plants a soft kiss right on his tiny snout. Gazing down with pure, unmistakable adoration, she softly whispers her love for her fluffy little companion. Those simple, tender words echo through his mind, striking a chord deep within his dormant soul. A sudden, intense blush warms his face as a powerful sensation catches the noble completely off guard. The regal spirit of Ray's stands deeply troubled, touching his chin in confusion over the erratic beating of his heart. Outside, a peaceful silence blankets the cozy cabin under a vast star-filled night sky. Snuggled inside his wicker basket, the puppy sleeps soundly, wrapped in his warm pink sweater. Suddenly, a powerful, radiant spark of magical energy ignites from his sleeping form. The entire basket is instantly engulfed in a blinding golden aura of raw magical power. A massive, blinding burst of light erupts, violently shattering his physical puppy limitations once and for all. As the brilliant light fades, a pair of elegant black leather boots firmly step onto the wooden floor. Standing tall in his human form, Ray's stares out into the moonlit night, completely stunned by this unexpected turn of events. He looks down at his hand in deep, flushed embarrassment, realizing his magical purity has been thoroughly compromised. Nearby, Liliana continues to sleep peacefully, entirely unaware of the dramatic change in her room. Looming over her bed, the restored noble stares down at his sleeping target with a dark, intense, and conflicted gaze. Memories of her loving kiss and warm words play on a loop, threatening to shatter his cold resolve. Ray's slowly touches his own lips in stunned silence, still feeling the phantom warmth of her gentle affection. Steel-cold determination battles his rising emotions as his hand slowly reaches down toward her face, leaving her fate hanging by a thread. Looming over his sleeping target, the restored noble's deadly intent hangs heavily in the silent bedroom. Liliana stirs slightly in her sleep, murmuring her beloved pet's name as he touches her chin. Slowly sliding his hand away, he hesitates before taking her life. Suddenly, a small, radiant pink spark ignites from her chest as his hand hovers near her heart. A blazing red aura erupts around Ray's as he struggles with his racing heart and the overpowering scent of the girl. The noble's inner turmoil deepens as he wonders if his body is resisting this fateful assassination. Steeling his crumbling resolve, he reminds himself that her death is absolutely non-negotiable. Raising his glowing, magic-infused hand, he prepares to strike her down in this exact instant. Before he can strike, Liliana's eyes slowly drift open, catching him completely off guard. Sitting up in bed, Liliana looks around, completely unaware of the deadly plot. Rubbing her sleepy eyes, she sleepily asks if her pet was unable to rest. Ray's gently places his hand upon her head to calm her half-awake mind. Standing tall, he quietly commands her to return to her slumber. A gentle, soothing magic flows from his hand into her hair. He slowly pulls his hand back as her eyelids grow heavy once more. Touching his throat in disbelief, Ray's is forced to admit his failure to end her life. Deciding to spare her for the moment, he turns away from the sleeping girl. Clenching his fist in silent frustration, he swears that the next encounter will be her last. Before leaving, he spots her hand-knitted pink sweater discarded on the wooden floor. He picks up the tiny knitted garment, recognizing his temporary winter wear. Looking closely, he internally criticizes the terrible quality of her knitting. Despite his harsh thoughts, a soft, involuntary smile tugs at the corner of his lips. Snapping a loose thread, he makes his final decision to depart. He walks out into the night, leaving the warmth of the cabin behind. The heavy wooden door shuts with a quiet, decisive click. As morning light filters in, Liliana groggily wakes up. Shivering from the morning draft, she complains about the sudden biting cold. Looking toward the doorway, she realizes with confusion that the main door stands wide open. Rubbing her eyes, she finds it strange since she clearly locked the door last night. Suddenly, a terrifying realization strikes her and she freezes. Looking over at the empty basket, she screams Momo's name in pure desperation. She frantically searches every corner of the house, calling out for her missing companion. Standing in the empty room, her voice trembles as she calls his name one last time. Clasping her hands to her chest, she dreads what might have happened to her fragile pet. Throwing the front door open, she prepares to search the freezing wilderness outside. Venturing into the deep snow, she desperately shouts for Momo, hoping he hasn't gone far. She desperately prays that her small, vulnerable companion will somehow be safe. Cup-shaping her hands, she calls out into the frozen woods with tears in her eyes. Running blindly into the freezing winter forest, she begs him to just be safe. Walking away in the deep snow, Razes reflects on his initial plan to kill her the moment his mana returned. The noble ponders why he couldn't bring himself to strike down the defenseless girl. He is left with no answers, his mind completely clouded by confusion. His jaw tightens as he tries to suppress his growing emotional conflict. A vision of Liliana's radiant, welcoming smile flashes before his eyes, weakening his cold resolve. Shielding his face from the harsh wind, he presses forward through the heavy snowstorm. His crimson eyes narrow with a cold, renewed sense of focus. A painful childhood memory resurfaces, showing him crying beside a fallen woman while a shadowy man sneers. The cruel, mocking grin of the shadowy tormentor burns brightly in his memory. Grimacing in silent rage, the painful wounds of his past fuel his burning hatred. He swears to never forget the horrific events that molded him into a cold-hearted killer. Standing atop a frozen mountain peak, the powerful gray-haired noble, steeling his resolve, prepares for a fateful confrontation. As a dangerous crimson aura erupts around his feet, he swears that their next meeting will be their last. Leaping down from the massive cliff, he vows to sever his ties with the girl by his own hands. His dark cape flutters in the wind as he contemplates the terrifying truth of what will happen if he hesitates. Beneath a beautiful floral backdrop, he faces his ultimate fear, that he might be falling in love with her. Gazing out at his grand estate under the bright morning sun, the noble stands with a cold, renewed focus. Suddenly, a loyal blonde knight named Caro runs through the palace halls to welcome his lord back. Overjoyed to see him safe, Caro admits he was on the verge of sending out a massive search party. Dismissing his subordinate's worries, the noble removes his cloak as Caro questions why he returned completely alone. The blonde knight presses further, curiously asking if the target somehow managed to escape his grasp. Shaping his words carefully, the gray-haired noble explains that unexpected circumstances prevented her immediate return. Beading with sweat, he insists that he has located her position and will retrieve her soon. Dismissively waving his hand, the noble commands Caro to stay out of the matter, leaving him utterly baffled. Watching his master walk away, Caro finds his unusually secretive behavior after a month-long search highly suspicious. Brushing his doubts aside, Caro mentioned shocking reports that the young woman was severely abused by her family. The noble's crimson eyes widen in shock as Caro details her tragic history of brutal labor and physical violence. Utterly stunned, he listens silently as Caro admits he would have fled too under those dreadful conditions. A vision of the pale, battered girl flashes before his eyes, suddenly explaining her fragile physical condition. Turning back to face him, Caro asks if she is truly his fated one, and his master solemnly confirms it. Excitedly, Caro offers to prepare a chamber for her in advance, but the noble declines for now. Caro expresses confusion over the delay, but his master firmly reiterates she will not be brought back just yet. The warm atmosphere vanishes instantly as the noble calls out his subordinate's name with chilling authority. Enveloped in a dark aura, he strictly forbids Caro from breathing a single word about the girl to anyone. Looming over the sight, he demands to know if his absolute warning is fully understood. Bowing deeply, a sweating Caro quickly complies, prompting a cold nod of approval from his master. Outside, a massive red imperial banner bearing a golden dragon crest flaps proudly in the wind. Deep within a shadowy lair, a mysterious voice inquires about suspicious movements happening near the cartel. Sitting at his desk in a neutral zone, a man wearing a golden lion mask complains about the tedious situation. Holding up a glowing green vial, he muses that letting the southern barbarians run wild poses no issue. Handing the vial to a hooded subordinate, he commands him to send court to stir up chaos. Crushing the vial with brute force, the masked leader orders his subordinate to capture the Sarrow of Raises. With green liquid dripping from his hand, the ruthless leader declares he does not care if she lives or dies. Enveloped in shadow, his singular, brutal demand is to have the young woman brought directly to him. The scene shifts to a grand imperial crest, signaling the start of a high-level military council. A tense council meeting commences as the white-haired nobles of the family gather around a massive marble table. Two young nobles with silver-white hair sit in tense silence, awaiting the start of the strategic briefing. Across the table, a noble girl sucking on a lollipop sits beside her comrades, looking completely unbothered. Looking around the crowded room, the gray-haired family head notes that all key members are present. Sitting at the head of the long table, the gray-haired noble authoritatively announces the start of the council. A mustachioed official stands to present a report, detailing the sudden spotting of cunt savages near the cartel. The announcement sparks immediate frustration among the white-haired nobles, who complain about another grueling campaign. Whispers echo through the hall as the nobles complain about being sent out right after their leader's return. The gray-haired noble remains quiet as others gossip about his month-long search for the fated girl. The bickering intensifies as the nobles loudly question why their leader returned empty-handed after so long. Stepping in, the mustachio presenter firmly demands silence from the unruly council so they can proceed. Restoring order, the presenter bows and continues his report about highly unusual movements detected in the area. He reveals the highly unusual detail that the enemy forces were spotted near the Morin Forest. Hearing the familiar name, the gray-haired noble's eyes widen slightly as he repeats the forest's name. The presenter warns that if left unchecked, the barbarians will seize the cartel and launch an invasion. Red eyes narrowing, the noble realizes with sudden terror that the incoming invaders are targeting the girl's location. A dark and bloody text heralds the arrival of a terrifying threat, the ruthless Coon tribe. These feral, bloodthirsty savages are notorious for their terrifying practice of cannibalism. At the head of this brutal clan are two monstrous twin leaders. A grim warning declares that local cartel forces stand absolutely no chance. To counter this threat, the imperial court issues a secretive decree. The official announces the supreme order to completely subjugate the tribe. Silence fills the grand hall as the heavy news sinks in. The nobles immediately protest being forced to handle such monstrous man-eaters. Two senior nobles sharply question the honor of their complaining peers. A young girl with twin pigtails dismisses their cowardly worries completely. Introducing Sage Eberhardt, who ruthlessly suggests blowing the savages to pieces. Sage complains about doing the court's dirty work, but her comrade defends the court's cautious motives. Abel Eberhardt confidently notes that the mission proves their family's unmatched reliability. An enthusiastic voice loudly agrees, cutting through the tense atmosphere. Heavy black boots stamp down violently onto the pristine council table. A bloodthirsty declaration rings out, demanding the total slaughter of the savages. Ken Eberhardt joyfully expresses his immense excitement for the upcoming bloodshed. Sage and Havel look on in deep annoyance, telling Ken to step down. Ken stubbornly refuses to back down, sparking an immediate clash. The trio breaks into a chaotic chibi brawl, leaving onlookers utterly speechless. The white-haired family head sighs wearily, commanding the noisy trio to stop. The sweating official awkwardly praises their enthusiasm to ease his own worries. The presenter urges the bickering trio to sit so he can explain. He explains that 3 top fighters are required to handle the twins. Both Ken and Sage boast that they can easily win alone. The official warns against underestimating the enemy's dangerous combat variables. He nervously asks if the 3 of them will deploy together. To his shock, both Sage and Havel immediately decline the deployment. Sage proudly declares her hatred of being used as an imperial puppet. Havel admits he only stepped in to keep Sage from acting out. Ken eagerly volunteers alone, but the blonde knight desperately objects. The knight argues they need proof of the kill, while Ken just wants total destruction. The blonde knight despairs, realizing they are headed toward total chaos. Suddenly, a cold, decisive voice declares that he will go instead. The blonde knight recoils in absolute shock at his master's unexpected statement. The gray-haired family head firmly repeats his decision to personally take the mission. The presenter stands frozen in disbelief, sweating profusely at the sudden announcement. Stunned silence grips the room as the nobles stare at their leader. The realization hits everyone that the supreme leader is deploying himself. Raises stares ahead with icy determination driven by a secret motive. The scene shifts back to the quiet, empty cabin in the forest. Trembling hands clutch a handmade pink sweater, a fragile thread snapping. Liliana weeps bitterly, desperately clutching the tiny garment to her chest. A kind brown-haired villager kneels down, gently trying to comfort her. He urges her to stay strong, insisting that her beloved pet is still alive. The supportive villager reassures her with a warm, comforting smile. Wiping her tears, Liliana clings to the hope of finding him injured nearby. Filled with desperate resolve, Liliana runs out into the blinding white snow. She shouts her companion's name, searching frantically through the frozen woods. Shivering and weeping, she begs to know where her precious friend could have gone. Driven by desperation, she spots animal paw prints, hoping they belong to her lost dog. She walks deeper into the silent forest, completely unaware of the looming danger. Black crows circle the pale sky, screaming an omen of incoming terror. Finding the absolute silence suspicious, she pauses to scan her freezing surroundings. Stranded in the snow, she realizes she has wandered too deep into the woods. Torn between safety and finding her companion, she hesitates to turn back. The unexpected sound of crackling wood nearby suddenly catches her attention. Spotting a campfire, she hopes the two strangers sitting there have seen her pet. Approaching timidly, she asks the mysterious men if they have seen her puppy. The two broad-shouldered men turn around, staring at her with cold, menacing confusion. Surprised to see a human, they mention mistaking her for their leader. She gasps in fear as one of the men claims she startled them. Looming over her, the predators mockingly declare a mere rabbit cannot satisfy their massive hunger. Terror strikes her heart as the monster joyfully celebrates finding a human snack. Back at the palace, servants drape a dark cloak over the patriarch's shoulders. The gray-haired leader pulls on his black leather gloves with cold determination. Caro presents the critical combat potion belt to his master. Staring ahead in silence, the noble's crimson eyes gleam with sharp focus. His loyal assistant holds out the heavy leather belt packed with vital vials. Meanwhile, shivering in the deep snow, the small white puppy struggles to survive. The chibi patriarch shoots a sharp glare at his sweating, confused assistant. Anticipating a deadly clash, he commands his subordinate to pack more combat potions. Fastening his gear, he permits his hesitating subordinate to ask a bold question. Caro questions why his master is personally deploying instead of sending his top fighters. The blonde knight wonders why his lord would personally obey a royal decree. The gray-haired patriarch stands in rigid silence, offering absolutely no response. Ignoring the query, he coldly announces his departure and walks away. Walking down the grand corridor, he silently admits he cannot explain his sudden impulse. Under normal circumstances, he would have completely ignored this troublesome imperial subjugation order. He reflects on his exhaustion, admitting he is thoroughly tired of these combat missions. He notes that a persistent thought has been weighing heavily on his mind. That persistent thought is the fragile girl Liliana Parveni. A vivid memory flashes of Liliana smiling warmly while hugging her beloved white pet. He reflects on how she had finally started showing genuine, bright human happiness. He clenches his fist in fury, realizing he volunteered purely because he imagined her being harmed. He rationalizes his behavior by insisting she must live to serve his ambition. He claims he simply wants to slaughter the savages for making him worry. He closes his eyes, trying to convince himself that is his only motivation. Caro interrupts his thoughts, asking if his master is ready to deploy. He resolves to find the girl, keeping his true worry buried deep. The gray-haired patriarch marches out of the gates to lead the military campaign. Bound tightly with ropes, the captive struggles helplessly against the rocky ground. Waking up disoriented, her blurred vision slowly focuses on a horrific pile of skeletons. She gasps in absolute horror, realizing she has been captured by ruthless cannibals. The dark memory of her captors boasting about their hunger flashes before her eyes. Terrified, she questions why there are bloodthirsty man-eaters hiding in the forest. Realizing her grave danger, she desperately struggles to break free from her bonds. Her desperate escape is cut short as the two massive savages notice she is awake. They mockingly explain that their leader is thrilled because human stock is running low. They drag her away to their leader, cruelly joking about who gets to eat her first. In a terrifying twist of fate, two menacing captors discuss Lord Kenta's dark tastes, hoping to feed on his leftovers. Horrified by their words, the captive girl realizes she must escape immediately or face a gruesome death. Amidst her rising panic, a painful memory of her screaming family flashes through her mind. Holding her breath to the point of dizziness, she desperately channels her inner anger to trigger her latent magic. With a sudden urge of determination, she prepares to unleash her power at the perfect moment. A blinding explosion of magic erupts, leaving her captors shielding their eyes in absolute shock. The swirling magical energy completely disorients the first captor, giving her a brief window of opportunity. Beside him, the second captor stumbles backward, temporarily paralyzed by the bizarre spell. Relieved her spell worked, she deduces that her magic only succeeded because her captors are low-ranking savages. She tries to make a run for it, hoping to escape before the temporary paralysis wears off. Suddenly, a sinister figure appears from the shadows, licking his fangs in anticipation of fresh human meat. The muscular leader, Kenta, mockingly praises her escape attempt and questions her magical rank. Cold terror grips her heart as she realizes she is standing before the notorious leader himself. Kenta boasts gleefully, declaring that a higher-ranked prey like her will taste far more delicious. Overcome by monstrous hunger, the savage leader prepares to take a bite right then and there. A sudden, powerful grip clenches Kenta's head, stopping his deadly advance in its tracks. Kenta's twin brother coldly steps in, warning him to stop acting on his own impulses. Kenta enthusiastically defends his actions, promising a grand feast tonight with their rare catch. The serious twin brother walks forward, sharply reminding Kenta of their primary mission. With a sudden lightning-fast strike, the serious brother unleashes a magical wave that floors the captive. Her vision fades into darkness under the cold, unyielding gaze of the twin leader. The serious brother tears open her collar, inspecting a hidden mark on her skin. He stares down in quiet contemplation after discovering the secret crest on her chest. Her limp, unconscious body collapses onto the cold stone ground with a heavy thud. Kenta protests, thinking his brother killed her, but the leader explains she is still alive. She remains unconscious, unaware that her mysterious mark has just barely spared her life. Shocked to learn her true identity, Kenta begs his brother for just a single bite. Annoyed by Kenta's relentless greed, the serious twin leader snaps back in deep frustration. He strictly commands Kenta to keep her alive, revealing that she already has an owner. Walking away, the leader declares that even lawless savages must respect certain boundaries. Bound and helpless, the unconscious girl is left alone on the dark, freezing floor. Meanwhile, Raises dashes through the freezing snowstorm with his assistant desperately struggling to keep pace. Karo notes that his master is in an unusual rush, but Raises remains completely silent. Karo suggests pacing his stamina, noting they are approaching the area where they last retrieved her. Karo silently suspects his master's true motivation, causing the patriarch to suddenly halt. Raises quickly denies any personal interest, claiming he only wants to finish this bothersome task quickly. Karo gently reminds him that a patriarch shouldn't remain away from his seat for too long. Karo smiles knowingly to himself, fully aware of what is truly driving his master. As they run, Karo wonders if this desperate rush is somehow connected to Lord Azeless. Back inside the dark, dripping cavern, the sound of soft weeping echoes through the silence. The captive girl hangs chained against the stone wall, crying in complete despair. She bitterly despairs over escaping her cruel family only to face a horrific end. Terrified of her impending fate, she openly weeps, begging to survive this nightmare. A chilling voice suddenly interrupts her tears, mockingly warning that crying ruins her flavor. Kenta steps into the cell, relieved she survived the shock of her capture. Shivering in fear, she watches in terror as her predator returns to her cell. Kenta admits he cannot resist the temptation to disobey his brother's strict orders. The savage monster licks his lips, completely consumed by his dark cannibalistic hunger. Grabbing her chin, Kenta prepares to devour his forbidden prize while she is still alive. Outside, the quiet camp sits nestled in the snowy mountains, hiding the horrific events unfolding within. Under the cover of darkness, a quiet campfire crackles softly beside a wooden table littered with picked clean bones. Unconscious from heavy drinking, two burly guards lie slumped over the wooden table, completely dead to the world. Nearby, another heavily tattooed sentry nods off in his chair, leaving the camp completely vulnerable to an ambush. Peering through the dense winter bushes, the scarred knight, Havel, quietly observes that the entire enemy camp has fallen asleep. Emerging beside him, the crimson-eyed patriarch, Raises, estimates that there are approximately 30 enemies occupying the area. Havel suggests waiting until the fleeting moments just before sunrise to launch their surprise attack when the guards are most off guard. He confidently plans to personally neutralize the enemy leader, Uno, to ensure a swift and decisive victory. Looking back at the camp, Havel wonders about the whereabouts of the other twin leader, noticing his complete absence from the area. Raises narrows his piercing crimson eyes, analyzing that the enemies have fully relocated their base, meaning the other twin must be nearby. When Havel asks if they should adjust their infiltration plan, Raises firmly orders him to proceed as scheduled and search for the missing twin afterward. Raises reflects on the missing leader's notoriously violent and dim-witted reputation, assuming he is simply passed out drunk somewhere. Suddenly, a strange scent wafting from the cave behind the barracks catches his attention, halting his speech. His eyes widen in sheer shock as he instantly recognizes the unmistakable presence of Liliana. Sensing the distinct magical presence of the missing leader alongside Liliana's scent, a wave of dread washes over the patriarch. Raises violently clenches his black-gloved fist, prompting a sweating and highly confused Havel to ask if something is wrong. Turning to his subordinate with cold intensity, Raises asks if Havel can handle taking down the sleeping camp all on his own. Though startled by the sudden request, Havel agrees, assuming his master has a vital task to attend to. With a terrifying, icy glare, Raises coldly announces a sudden change of plans as he prepares to storm the cave. Inside the dark cavern, a shivering Liliana trembles in terror as the depraved captor mockingly remarks that her fear ruins her flavor. With a sudden heavy metallic click, the captor's hand reaches out and unlocks her heavy iron shackles. Rubbing her bruised wrists, a deeply bewildered Liliana questions why her monstrous captor is suddenly releasing her from her bonds. Licking his fangs with a sinister grin, the tattooed cannibal mockingly asks if she is curious about his sudden mercy. He sadistically explains that he loathes eating defenseless prey, claiming humans taste best when they are desperately struggling for survival. Laughing maniacally, he opens his massive hands and commands her to run, fueling his dark hunger for a thrilling hunt. Terrified by his sheer madness, Liliana turns and dashes into the shadows of the cave, desperately praying to escape the lunatic. Tears streaming down her face, she screams out into the cold void, desperately pleading for anyone to save her from this nightmare. Suddenly, a massive, gloved hand clamps tightly over her mouth, cutting off her desperate screams in an instant. Whispering menacingly in her ear, the captor warns her to stay quiet, reminding her that his brother Genta is sleeping nearby. Squeezing her eyes shut, Liliana summons every ounce of her latent magical power, unleashing a desperate surge of energy. The captor merely sneers, mockingly pointing out that she is foolishly wasting her weak mana on someone far stronger than her. Gripping her neck tightly, he sneeringly reminds her that a low-ranked Sero stands absolutely no chance against an elite Uno. Gasping for air under his crushing grip, Liliana panics, realizing she will truly suffocate to death if she cannot break free. Desperate to survive, the glowing crescent mark on her collar flares as she forces her remaining mana to erupt outward. The crazed savage laughs wildly in her face, confidently declaring that she will completely collapse before her magic can do anything. Suddenly, his smug expression falters as a wave of intense dizziness strikes his eyes, throwing his senses into disarray. Under the weight of her sudden magical overload, the massive captor collapses face first onto the rocky cavern floor with a heavy thud. Panting heavily, Liliana gasps in relief that her spell worked and resolves to flee before he recovers. Her relief is instantly shattered as a powerful iron grip suddenly clamps around her ankle, halting her escape. Looking up with a twisted, terrifying grin, the captor admits her magic momentarily dazed him, but it was not enough. Liliana's eyes widen in absolute horror as the relentless predator refuses to let go of his prey. Dragging her backward onto the freezing ground, he creepily chuckles, finding her desperate struggle to be incredibly entertaining. Looming over her trembling body, the savage licks his lips, eagerly declaring that she will make the finest meal of his life. Crying helplessly on the cold stone floor, Liliana despairs, finding herself completely out of mana and entirely alone. Suddenly, a spark of pure survival instinct flares in her green eyes as she realizes there is still one desperate option left. Gathering her remaining physical strength, she pushes herself off the ground, standing tall with newfound fierce determination. Amused by her sudden defiance, the arrogant savage mockingly asks if she still thinks she can fight back. Delivering a brutally decisive blow, Liliana swings her leg forward and kicks the savage squarely in the crotch with maximum force. The captor's smug face instantly freezes, his eyes bulging in absolute agonizing shock as the devastating pain registers. Shaking with a mix of fear and disgust, Liliana watches as the monstrous predator begins to buckle from the impact. The massive cannibal collapses to the ground in whimpering defeat, leaving Liliana standing over him as she plans her next move. Relieved that her desperate plan actually worked, Liliana rejoices in her temporary victory. She quickly runs to escape the cave before sunrise. A chilling voice echoes in the darkness, declaring a change of mind. Terrified by the sudden threat, she watches as the savage captor unleashes a murderous purple aura, declaring his intent to tear her to pieces. He slowly steps forward, his dark magic swirling around his feet. Staring with glowing red eyes, the predator declares that playtime is officially over. Paralyzed with fear, Liliana weakly drops her hand, believing her end has come. As the monstrous cannibal walks toward her, she realizes his strength is far beyond her escape. Tears streaming down her face, she desperately whispers the name of her beloved puppy. Recalling a distant promise of survival, she braces as the vicious predator lunges to attack. Closing her eyes in terror, she prepares for the final fatal blow. Suddenly, a brilliant silver sword slash cuts through the dark cavern, interrupting the attack. With a single lightning-fast strike, the attacker's blade heavily neutralizes the threat. Shocked by the sudden turn of events, Liliana gasps as her captor stumbles backward. The massive captor crashes to the floor as a mysterious noble catches the exhausted girl. Lying defeated on the ground, the savage captor reels in disbelief at being taken down so effortlessly. He gasps in utter horror, unable to comprehend who possesses such terrifying power. Looking up, Liliana instantly recognizes the legendary figure holding her. She is left completely spellbound as the crimson-eyed patriarch Raises Eberhardt holds her. He gently lifts her into his arms, carrying her away from the danger. Raisin silently looks ahead, his cold expression hiding his inner thoughts. He exits the frozen cavern, cradling her in a protective grip against the freezing wind. Confused by her surroundings, Liliana weakly murmurs the name of her lost companion. The patriarch suddenly halts, his attention drawn to her quiet whispering. Looking down at her, Reyes quietly expresses deep relief that she survived this nightmare. Overwhelmed with emotion, she realizes just how deeply he actually cared for her safety. Feeling completely safe in his arms, Liliana finally closes her eyes in peace. Outside, Havel salutes his master, reporting a successful mission while Reyes commends his efforts. Havel curiously asks his lord about the unconscious woman in his arms. Reyes explains she was abducted from Cardell, declaring he will personally return her since he has business there. Havel comments on the miracle of her survival, while Reyes internally denies having any personal motives. Noticing Havel's lingering gaze, Reyes sharply questions him, causing the knight to panic. Dismissing his excuses, Reyes orders Havel to clean up the cave, shocking the knight, who realizes the enemies are already defeated. Bowing respectfully, Havel accepts his orders to return to the estate ahead of his lord. With a sudden flash of crimson magical energy, Reyes instantly teleports away with the girl. Left behind, Havel marvels at how effortlessly his lord dealt with the formidable enemies. He reflects on the terrifying, overwhelming aura his master unleashed, leaving the savages absolutely no chance. He realizes his master's extreme urgency was entirely due to the captive being his own personal vassal. Smiling to himself, Havel quietly notes that the patriarch simply cannot be honest with his true feelings. The golden rays of dawn begin to pierce through the quiet, snowy mountains. Scratching his head, Havel lets out a weary sigh at his impending chore. He looks over the massive camp of defeated guards, dreading the monumental task of cleaning up alone. Returning to safety, Reyes gently carries the sleeping girl into a warm bedroom. He gazes down at her peaceful face, softly whispering her full name. Caressing her face, he admits he needs her unique power to grow stronger and extend his lifespan. Yet, looking at her, he realizes she is entirely different from anyone else. Resting his hand near her, his quiet presence makes her wonder why he yearns for her so deeply. In her dreams, she questions if his affection is genuine or if he is simply starved for comfort. Waking up in tears, she remembers his puzzling words about why she repeatedly called him by that name. Enshrouded in a sudden burst of magical light, the patriarch resolves that thinking alone won't reveal the truth. Enshrouded in a blinding flash of raw magic, the patriarch realizes that thinking alone will never unveil the secrets of his fated vassal. He resolves to take a drastic secret measure to solve his problem, casting a powerful transformation spell. With a sudden burst of energy, the blinding light fades to reveal an adorable, fluffy white puppy standing on the floor. Now disguised as the puppy Momo, the patriarch curls up in a basket, plotting to stay close to his fated vassal Liliana. The scene shifts to the quiet, sunlit bedroom where Liliana lies resting. Crying out in her sleep, she fitfully whispers an apology to her lost companion. Her mind plunges into a dark nightmare, recalling the freezing, oppressive wilderness. A trail of tiny paw prints in the deep snow marks her desperate search. In her dream, Liliana frantically runs through the blizzard, begging her puppy not to abandon her. She suddenly trips on the icy ground, crashing down with a painful gasp. A pair of bandaged, dirty feet suddenly block her path as a sinister voice notes her presence. Liliana looks up in absolute horror, her face pale with dread. The tattooed, monstrous cannibal looms over her with a sickening smile, demanding she play with him. With a sudden gasp, Liliana's eyes snap wide open as she violently awakens from her nightmare. She blinks in confusion, staring up at the warm wooden ceiling of a safe room. Sitting up in bed, she looks around in shock, realizing she is back in her own home. She clasps her trembling hands together, trying to make sense of her sudden return. Bowing her head, she offers a silent prayer of profound gratitude for her safety. Yet her eyes narrow in deep confusion as she wonders who could have brought her back. An ominous shadow of her grim memories looms heavily over her thoughts. She flashes back to her terrifying abduction, remembering the cold cave and the red-eyed patriarch who saved her. She remembers weeping in absolute despair, fully expecting to die in that dark cavern. Sitting up in bed, she reasons that her mysterious savior must be someone from her homeland who knows where she lives. Touching her cheek in disbelief, she wonders how any of this is even possible. A single tear of profound relief slips down her face. Overcome with emotion, she buries her face in her hands, sitting quietly on the wooden floor. She weeps softly, expressing her immense joy and gratitude for being alive. Suddenly, a soft, familiar whimper echoes from the woven basket in the corner. Liliana instantly freezes, her heart skipping a beat at the sound. She slowly turns her head, spotting the little basket with her puppy's name on it. Wiping her tears, she rationalizes that her exhaustion must be making her hallucinate things. The sharp, energetic bark suddenly rings out, shattering her doubts in an instant. Liliana gasps, turning back toward the sound with rising hope and disbelief. Her eyes widen to their absolute limits as she stares at the basket. The fluffy white puppy sits up, letting out a massive, adorable yawn in the sunlight. Tears of joy stream down Liliana's face as she cries out to her beloved companion. Watching her reaction, the silver-haired patriarch internally notes how hard it is for her to believe her puppy's return. Dropping to her knees, Liliana pulls the white puppy into a desperate tight embrace. She weeps into its soft fur, asking where it has been all this time. Clutching the dog close, she pours her heart out, overwhelmed by the miracle of their reunion. She cradles the puppy's face, expressing her deepest affection and relief. Clinging to her companion on the floor, she begs it to never leave her side again. Hearing her desperate plea, a subtle, knowing smirk plays on the lips of the silver-haired patriarch. The puppy gently pats her shoulder, silently cementing its decision to stay. Standing beside her in a vision of absolute devotion, the patriarch vows to remain by her side forever. The emotional moment settles as this chapter of their fated journey draws to a peaceful close. Suddenly, a brown-haired young man bursts through the door, loudly asking if the news about Momo is true. Liliana quickly hushes him, warning him that the puppy is currently sleeping. The young man eagerly bounces on his feet, demanding to see him as Liliana points him toward the basket. He gazes down in pure delight at the fluffy white puppy sleeping peacefully in its cozy bed. As the terrifying shadow of her recent kidnapping looms, Liliana frantically warns her loud companion to keep his voice down. Completely oblivious to the danger, Baylor smothers the grumpy white puppy with suffocating affection. Baylor dramatically recounts how the entire village panicked during Momo's brief disappearance. As Balor continues to coddle him, Momo's dangerous patience officially runs out. With lightning-fast speed, the disgruntled puppy viciously chomps directly onto Baylor's face. A blood-curdling scream of pure agony echoes across the snowy wilderness. Rolling over with feigned innocence, Momo lazily listens to Liliana's gentle scolding. Baylor whines over his ruined dignity while Momo barks back with smug satisfaction. The atmosphere shifts to suspicion as Baylor questions Liliana about where she disappeared to. Liliana freezes, desperately trying to hide the dark truth of her near-fatal kidnapping. A sudden, chaotic racket shatters the silence of the cozy cabin. Panicked beyond belief, Baylor grabs Liliana, demanding to know if she is her. Liliana gently reassures him, successfully calming his wild, frantic panic. She reveals the horrifying truth, admitting she blacked out right before the cannibals attacked. Baylor freezes in terror, while Liliana guesses a local squad rescued her. Baylor strokes his chin, theorizing that the regular forest patrol must have saved her. He asks if she remembers anything else, triggering a strange, lingering memory. A powerful, majestic phantom of the silver-haired patriarch suddenly flashes in her mind. Liliana mentions seeing silver fur, but Baylor immediately laughs off the ridiculous idea. Hearing his rescue mocked, the transformed patriarch glares with absolute homicidal rage. Balor continues to insult the idea, completely unaware of the threat stepping forward. Offended by the disrespect, Momo viciously sinks his fangs into Baylor's ankle. A cold shiver runs down Baylor's spine as sheer pain paralyzes him. A dramatic shriek of absolute agony shatters the peaceful room once again. Baylor frantically shakes his leg to dislodge the stubbornly clinging white puppy. Utterly defeated and nursing his wounds, Baylor pouts in the corner. Liliana gasps in concern, noticing the deep bite mark on Baylor's leg. Determined to help, Liliana quickly prepares a soothing medicine to treat him. Uncorking the healing potion, she softly warns him that it might sting. Balor suddenly stops, noticing the raw, painful scratches covering Liliana's arms. Refusing to let her suffer, Baylor firmly takes the medicine to treat her first. Touched by his sudden intensity, Liliana's cheeks flush with a soft blush. Baylor gently takes her arm, preparing to apply the healing ointment. Blushing slightly, Baylor softly encourages her to endure the sharp pain. He carefully dabs the damp cotton onto her raw, wounded skin. Liliana smiles softly, finding the cold medicine surprisingly soothing. A heavy, somber guilt suddenly washes over Baylor's downcast face. Overcome with regret, Baylor quietly offers a deeply sincere apology. He explains he was working and had no idea she was in such mortal danger. In a burst of passion, Baylor vows he would have risked his life to save her. Liliana's eyes widen in complete shock at his fierce, heartfelt confession. Realizing how intensely he just spoke, Baylor's face turns bright, burning red. Desperate to break the suffocating awkwardness, both teens wave their hands in pure embarrassment. Sensing a threat, Momo lets out a sharp, angry bark to shatter the romantic mood. Mistaking the warning for a plea for attention, Baylor foolishly reaches out to the beast. Mono wastes no time, violently clamping his jaws shut on Baylor's finger. Baylor weeps in utter despair, completely baffled by the puppy's relentless hatred. Retreating to his basket, the disguised patriarch silently curses Bowler for eyeing his vassal. The majestic phantom of Reyes' Eberhard proudly asserts his absolute untouchable claim. Completely oblivious to the secret war, Liliana beams with pure happiness at her adorable pet. A powerful force of pure dignity is instantly shattered as the silver-haired patriarch glares in absolute shock. A chaotic, panicked scream echoes through his mind as he struggles to comprehend his highly embarrassing situation. Liliana squeals with absolute delight, completely obsessed with how adorable Momo looks in his new yellow sweater. The proud patriarch rages internally at his loss of authority while his fluffy puppy form lets out fetal barks. Cradling the disgruntled white puppy, Liliana beams with gratitude, thanking Momo for wearing the clothes she made him. Liliana affectionately promises to buy him delicious food and fine clothes, begging him to stay by her side forever. Touched by her deep, innocent affection, a rare and gentle smile softly graces the patriarch's lips. Liliana blushes with warm happiness, admitting she stands no chance against his incredibly cute charms. Watching her smile, the patriarch's phantom notes a profound sense of peace, realizing that life as her pet might actually be pleasant. He quickly shakes off the soft thoughts, sternly reminding himself that this is no time to get comfortable. Standing in the quiet room, the phantom of the majestic lord deeply contemplates his next tactical steps. Shifting her position, Liliana smiles warmly at Momo and tells him she has one more favor to ask. Intrigued, the patriarch's phantom turns his head back, wondering what trick she has up her sleeve. Leaning in close to the puppy's face, Liliana flashes an incredibly sweet, mysterious smile. Smiling brightly, she holds up a dark leather strap, preparing to reveal her latest surprise. A cold sweat breaks out on the silver-haired patriarch as he realizes the horrifying implications of that leather strap. He stands completely paralyzed in sheer disbelief as Liliana cheerfully suggests going for a walk. Absolute horror strikes both man and beast as they realize a majestic lord is about to be walked on a leash. Meanwhile, an urgent call for skilled recruits echoes across the kingdom as forces prepare to march. The scene shifts to a serene, snow-covered forest where dark, deadly secrets are about to be unearthed. A soldier steps beside a fresh pool of blood, grimly reporting that the monsters have already taken lives. Crouching in the deep snow, the blonde captain commands his squad to prepare for a swift, coordinated ambush. The captain begins a tense countdown, his eyes narrowing as he prepares to lead the strike. Two dark-haired soldiers sweat under the immense pressure as the countdown reaches 2. With a fierce battle cry, the soldiers charge forward into the enemy barbarian camp. Their heavy boots slide to an abrupt, screeching halt as an unexpected sight stops them cold. The soldiers stare in absolute bewilderment, asking their captain what could have possibly happened here. The captain stands frozen, sweating profusely as he tries to make sense of the unbelievable scene. They stare in utter shock at the completely decimated camp, wondering who could have wiped out the barbarians first. Back at the cozy cabin, Liliana happily holds up the leash, ready to take Momo outside. Momo barks furiously in denial while the patriarch's phantom loudly protests that he is not a common dog. Completely oblivious to his pride, Liliana firmly attaches the harness, telling him to hold still for their outing. Momo lets out frustrated barks as Liliana excitedly mentions she has prepared one final accessory. A sudden wave of intense dread washes over the patriarch as he wonders what else she could have made. Momo's eyes widen with a cold sweat, sensing an impending blow to his ultimate dignity. Liliana reveals a set of tiny, incredibly cute puppy booties in her hands with a radiant grin. The silver-haired patriarch stares blankly, his soul slowly leaving his body at the ridiculous sight. He goes completely pale, utterly defeated by the absolute humiliation of his current situation. Liliana claps her hands in pure ecstasy as Momo stands frozen on the floor wearing the tiny booties. The phantom of the proud patriarch blushes a furious red, completely mortified by his ridiculous outfit. Holding up one tiny booted paw, Momo reluctantly accepts his defeat, wishing he could escape this adorable torture. Liliana laughs heartily, surrounded by beautiful blooming roses as she thoroughly enjoys playing with her dressed-up pet. Under the bright sun, the cozy cabin stands surrounded by lush green trees, marking the beautiful transition to summer. Stepping outside, Liliana shields her eyes from the warm sun, remarking on how wonderful the weather is. Leaning down, she gleefully asks Momo if he is excited to be out in the fresh air. Twirling gracefully through a vibrant field of wildflowers, Liliana happily shows Momo the gorgeous blossoms. Bathed in the warm sunlight, Liliana waves her hand with a stunning, pure smile of absolute joy. She calls out to Momo to join her, her joyful laughter echoing across the beautiful meadow. Standing nearby, the patriarch's phantom crosses his arms, watching her with a calm, protective gaze. Seeing her safe and happy, a soft, genuine smile slowly spreads across the patriarch's face, cementing his silent vow. Baylor walks down a sunny path to meet Liliana and Momo, setting off a chain of events that will shake the kingdom's foundations. Liliana runs joyfully through the lush green field, completely enamored with her cute dressed-up puppy. Liliana claps with sheer delight at Momo's cute antics while Baller watches them in absolute irritation. Liliana crowns the fluffy puppy with beautiful flowers, ignoring Balor's mounting frustration. As the sun warms the sky, Liliana expresses how much fun she's having today. Resting under a massive tree, Liliana strokes Momo while Balor's phantom complains about how utterly exhausting this walk is. An elderly white-haired man suddenly waves and calls out to Liliana from across the meadow. Recognizing the newcomer, Liliana turns around with a bright, welcoming smile. The elderly baker encourages Liliana to visit their local village more often. In a display of warm affection, Liliana happily hugs Mr. Jake. Mr. Jake kindly offers to give her delicious bread if she stops by his bakery. Liliana insists on paying, but Mr. Jake suggests she can just help out around the shop instead. Balor's phantom watches in pure, simmering jealousy as Liliana playfully considers the baker's offer. Extremely offended, Momo starts barking fiercely at the elderly baker to assert his dominance. Intrigued by the noise, Mr. Jake asks if this cute puppy is her new pet. Mr. Jake asks if he can hold the puppy, making Momo flinch in sudden panic. The elderly baker kneels down to scoop up the tiny, squirming white dog. Mr. Jake squishes Momo's face, completely oblivious to the beast's growing fury. Balor's phantom looks on with absolute homicidal rage at the physical disrespect. Dark, foreboding clouds suddenly gather in the sky as a powerful energy builds up. A devastating bolt of divine lightning strikes the forest, unleashing an immense wave of raw power. Liliana shields her eyes in sheer terror as the shocking blast rattles the area. Her eyes widen in complete horror as she tries to comprehend the sudden magical anomaly. Liliana frantically looks down, checking to make sure her beloved pet is unharmed. She turns her gaze back to the baker, who stands completely paralyzed by the close call. Liliana asks if he is all right, and Mr. Jake slowly tries to find his words. The baker sweats profusely, muttering that it felt like time itself briefly stood still. Back in his basket, Momo fumes in anger over the baker's audacity to touch him. Balor's phantom sits in deep contemplation, replaying the day's events in his mind. A dark cloud of disapproval hangs over him as he voices his extreme dislike of the situation. The proud patriarch clicks his tongue in sheer annoyance, refusing to tolerate such disrespect. Balor realizes he must control his mana because Cartel's barrier tower will detect his presence if he isn't careful. Momo quickly snaps out of his deep thoughts as Liliana calls out to him. Liliana holds up a cloth, gently asking if she can wipe him down before bed. Liliana carefully wipes his paws, softly encouraging the stoic puppy to endure the cleaning. Wiping his tail next, Liliana praises Momo for being such a well-behaved companion. Deep in thought, the majestic lord watches Liliana as she begins to speak softly to him. Liliana smiles gently, admitting she never imagined she'd experience so much joy in her life. Blushing warmly, she explains how much she treasures being able to live a normal, happy life. She gazes affectionately at the puppy, declaring that this newfound peace is all thanks to him. Liliana tenderly nuzzles her face against Momo, whispering a heartfelt confession of love. Stunned by her pure, unbridled affection, the patriarch's phantom stares back in utter shock. A soft flush of embarrassment overcomes the proud lord as he slowly slumps to the floor. His racing thoughts begin to quiet down as he notes a sudden wave of drowsiness washing over him. Peaceful energy fills the room as he realizes he will finally be able to sleep soundly tonight. Liliana peacefully drifts off to sleep, while the majestic phantom of the Lord watches over her protectively. The scene shifts to the military headquarters, where a blonde captain bursts through the doors in a panic. The blonde captain demands to know the duration of the detected mana, and the gray-haired soldier reports it was incredibly brief. The captain asks for confirmation of the location, which his subordinate immediately verifies. Looking at the massive glowing blue barrier stone, they confirm that the dangerous power source is definitely nearby, setting a dangerous pursuit in motion. A sudden, powerful surge of mysterious magic alerts the entire garrison, but the trace vanishes just as quickly as it appeared. The blonde captain fiercely rejects his subordinate's attempt to dismiss the anomaly, demanding absolute vigilance. Clenching his fist in anger, the captain warns that a deadly threat might have already infiltrated their borders. He issues a command to place the entire barrier tower on high alert and mobilize all patrolling forces. The soldiers salute in unison, ready to sweep the area for any sign of the trespasser. Weeks pass in quiet tranquility until a sudden request echoes inside the cozy cabin nestled in the Green Valley. While Liliana eagerly asks to learn the common language, the fluffy white puppy Momo fumes at their guest's annoying presence. Balor scratches his head in deep hesitation, doubting his own abilities to teach her effectively. Liliana smiles warmly, assuring him that she only needs to master the basic rules of reading and writing. Relieved by her humble request, Balor gladly agrees to help her start her studies. He puts pen to paper, carefully drafting the alphabet for her first official lesson. Balor patiently explains the first pronunciations, and Liliana quickly absorbs his instructions with a bright smile. Sweat drips down Baylor's face as the language's confusing grammatical exceptions quickly overwhelm his teaching skills. Totally flustered, the young teacher blushes a deep crimson as his academic confidence completely crumbles. Seeing his sudden distress, Liliana gently reaches out to ask if he is all right. A literal cloud of steam erupts from Baylor's head as his brain entirely short-circuits. Unable to endure the intense embarrassment, Baylor abruptly apologizes and flees the cabin in a panic. Running down the path, Baylor laments his lack of study, wishing he could have shown her a cooler side of himself. Though disappointed to see him go, Liliana remains determined to continue her studies alone today. As the golden sunset paints the sky, a series of impatient barks echoes through the valley. Gently petting Momo, Liliana apologizes for the delay and promises to feed him immediately. Stretching her tired limbs, she admits she was so absorbed in her lessons that she completely lost track of time. She marvels at the extensive notes Baylor left behind, filled with detailed pronunciation guides. A soft smile warms Liliana's face as she realizes Baller possesses a surprisingly thoughtful and delicate side. She presents Momo with a grand plate of delicious meat, and the puppy barks in pure delight. The majestic phantom of the patriarch complains about the delay, only to freeze up as he realizes his own words. The proud lord holds his face in absolute shame, horrified that he just referred to himself as a pet dog. Brushing off the awkwardness, Liliana enthusiastically returns to her desk to quiz herself on her new vocabulary. Watching her from the shadows, the silver-haired patriarch's phantom is quietly impressed by her fierce dedication. He notes that mastering this language alone is a daunting task, expecting her to struggle with the complex rules. When she easily solves another difficult translation, the Lord realizes she possesses extraordinary natural talent. Fury burns within the patriarch's phantom as he wonders how her family could have ever dared to abuse such a brilliant child. Meanwhile, a crumpled document is slammed onto a desk in a fit of violent rage. The cruel Parvanai patriarch fumes over another dead end, desperate to drag his escaped daughter back. He slams his fist down, roaring for his son Tatan to report to him immediately. Tatan rushes into the room, trembling under the suffocating pressure of his father's wrath. The furious patriarch demands results, but Tatan insists they have already searched every possible hideout. Refusing to accept failure, the father lashes out in fury until Tatan mentions one final, highly restricted location. Tatan explains that the final hiding spot is a tricky, well-hidden neutral zone that answers to no one. This heavily fortified sanctuary serves as a secure haven for outcasts, strictly guarded by the military. A sinister, predatory grin spreads across the patriarch's face as he realizes exactly where his daughter is hiding. Though Titan warns that trespassing inside the neutral zone would bring total ruin, his father refuses to back down. He orders his son to use bribery or find a back door, reminding him of the terrible stakes if they fail. Resigned to his fate, Totan walks away, bitterly cursing how his sister's escape has ruined his life. Dark, vengeful thoughts consume Tatan as he vows to make Liliana pay for all of his suffering. The sadistic patriarch grinds his lit cigar into the wooden desk, swearing to drag his daughter back to her personal hell. He cold-bloodedly plans to sell her off to the highest bidder to compensate for all the trouble she has caused him. With a terrifying, triumphant smirk, the evil father prepares to launch a ruthless hunt for his daughter. A heavy, ominous aura begins to gather in the darkness, signaling the arrival of a dangerous storm. Completely oblivious to the looming threat, Liliana sleeps peacefully, unaware that her sanctuary is no longer safe. Under a false name, a legendary beast hides in plain sight, biding his time for the ultimate strike. Under the cover of darkness, the majestic silver-haired phantom manifests in his true form to watch over the sleeping girl. He quietly contemplates the passing of time, amazed that a whole month has slipped by since his arrival. A subtle smile plays on his lips as he wonders if his absurd daily life as a puppy has softened his cold perception of time. Recognizing the heavy burden of his duties, he summons a glowing magical message to send word back to his estate. Yet a strange hesitation grips him, preventing him from finalizing the communication. Gazing down at the sleeping girl, he admits to himself that the sole reason for his sudden doubt is Liliaya. He watches her peacefully sleep, deeply troubled by his growing attachment and unsure of his next move. Bathed in a soft, ethereal light, the legendary patriarch struggles to choose between his duties and her safety. He bargains with himself, pleading for just one more day of this quiet peace. Just one last day of normalcy before he is forced to face reality. Squeezing the document tightly in his fist, he crushes his doubts to protect her for a little while longer. Turning away toward the window, he resolves to delay the painful final decision until tomorrow. His eyes burn with an icy resolve as he vows that tomorrow will decide her ultimate fate once and for all. Dawn breaks over the peaceful forest cabin, bringing with it a fateful new day of destiny. As the morning lessons begin, Baylor casually breaks the quiet atmosphere with an unexpected question. He directly asks Liliana when her birthday is, catching the fragile girl completely off guard. Her golden eyes widen in instant panic as she hesitantly asks why he wants to know. Baylor shrugs it off as a harmless detail, sharing that his own birthday in June has already gone by. Sensing her deep discomfort, Baylor gently asks if she prefers to keep it a secret, while Momo watches closely from the shadows. He quickly apologizes for making her feel pressured, prompting her to frantically try and explain. She laughs nervously, desperately trying to mask the dark, painful memories of her tragic past. Suddenly, an incredibly loud, dramatic shout of pure shock echoes through the entire valley, shaking the cabin. Inside, Baller is utterly dumbfounded to learn her birthday was just a few days ago, right when he first arrived. He passionately tells her she should have said something, while she stammers in absolute embarrassment. A horrific flashback reveals her abusive past, where she was brutally struck down and told her birthday was worthless. She vividly recalls being forced to stand in the cold shadows while her cruel family feasted happily without her. Left alone in the dark, the young girl could do nothing but weep over her miserable, unloved existence. Returning to the present, she softly explains that she truly believed her special day was never worth mentioning. Baylor's face darkens with protective fury as he fiercely rejects her heartbreaking words. With absolute sincerity, he looks her in the eye and declares his genuine desire to celebrate her life. Her heart skips a beat as she absorbs the warm, foreign feeling of someone actually caring about her. Reaching a sudden decision, Baylor stands abruptly, declaring that they cannot simply let this go. He bolts out the door in a massive hurry, promising to return in just a short moment. She stands frozen, completely bewildered by his sudden, chaotic exit. Momo watches him leave with his usual grumpy attitude, highly suspicious of whatever the boy is up to. The silent, silver-haired phantom looks on, keeping a protective, brooding vigil over her in the quiet cabin. Left alone with her thoughts, she wonders if she really deserves to have a happy life. Hours pass in quiet stillness as the golden sun begins to set over the peaceful valley. Exhausted from her intense studies, Liliana peacefully drifts off to sleep right at her desk. Sudden knocks on the cabin door break the silence as a familiar voice announces his return. She blinks her golden eyes open in confusion, slowly realizing she had fallen asleep. Rubbing the sleep from her eyes, she calls out for him to come inside. From the other side, Baylor insists that she open the door herself since his hands are completely full. Yawning softly, she stands up and makes her way to the door to let him in. As she pulls the door open, she begins to tease him about his long delay, only to freeze mid-sentence. She is greeted by a breathtaking sight as Baylor and the local villagers burst in with a massive cake. Her mind struggles to comprehend this unbelievable display of love as she stares in utter shock. Baylor beams with joy, explaining how he rallied the entire village to celebrate her special day together. The warm-hearted crowd surrounds her with smiles, revealing a cake made 3 times larger to make up for lost time. With a lifetime of neglected birthdays behind her, Liliana stares in absolute disbelief as Baller presents a massive, towering strawberry cake, promising that her special day will never be forgotten again. A rush of overwhelming warmth floods Liliana's heart, causing tears of pure happiness to well up in her eyes as she processes this unprecedented kindness. The heartwarming celebration escalates as Uncle Jake joins in with a rare bottle of local specialty wine, eager to kick off a joyful night of celebration. A playful warning warns Jake to watch his drinking, teasing that his wife won't be pleased if he overindulges tonight. Overwhelmed by the sheer weight of their affection, Liliana clings to the massive cake as her entire body begins to tremble with deep emotion. Noticing her sudden silence, Baylor and Uncle Jake instantly panic, worriedly asking if she is crying from distress. Wiping away a stray tear, Liliana quickly reassures them that she is completely fine, struggling to contain her swelling emotions. Her hands continue to shake violently against the platter, the simple gesture of holding a birthday cake feeling utterly foreign to her. A heartbreaking memory of her past resurfaces, recalling how she was once forced to watch her abusive family feast in warmth while she starved in the cold shadows. Returning to the warm reality of the present, she is met with the bright, welcoming smiles of the villagers who truly care for her. A radiant, genuine smile finally breaks across Liliana's face as she joyfully confesses that she has never felt so happy in her entire life. Watching the touching scene unfold from the threshold, the silver-haired patriarch's phantom gazes at her with a soft, protective expression. A delicate white flower lies quietly on the wooden floor, mirroring the pure and fragile peace that has finally bloomed in her life. As dusk settles over the valley, the small cabin glows with warm light, a cozy sanctuary of laughter and newfound belonging. Sweet, cheerful energy fills the festive atmosphere as the celebration continues late into the evening. The mood shifts to chaotic comedy as a heavily intoxicated Baylor throws a dramatic tantrum, desperately demanding to pet Momo's fluffy belly. Uncle Jake hilariously blocks the unruly boy as Momo barks in fierce protest, refusing to let the drunk intruder near him. Amused by the chaos, Jake decides it is time to wrap up the party, though a stubborn Baylor refuses to leave without his cuddles. Liliana giggles softly at their antics, thanking everyone for giving her the most unforgettable birthday of her life. Jake has no choice but to carry the weeping, protesting boy out on his back, playfully bidding Liliana goodnight. With a final sharp click, the door closes shut, leaving the cabin engulfed in a peaceful, quiet serenity. Liliana exhales a long, relieved sigh, her heart finally settling after an incredibly emotional evening. Spotting Momo nearby, she decides to keep her loyal companion close, feeling a deep bond of shared comfort with him. With gentle, open arms, she warmly invites the fluffy puppy over to be held. As she lifts him up, a sudden sharp headache throbs through her head, forcing a painful wince from her lips. Attributing the sudden pain to the wine, she decides a breath of cool night air is exactly what she needs to clear her mind. Peering through the window, her golden eyes widen in soft wonder as she notices a change in the night sky. She smiles gently at the falling winter landscape, holding Momo out to witness the mesmerizing flurry of snow. But behind her, the silver-haired patriarch's phantom flinches in sudden, visceral shock at her next words. Gently asking Momo if he dislikes the cold weather as much as she does, she hints at a hidden sorrow. With careful tenderness, she places the puppy back onto the wooden floor to keep him warm. Looking back out at the glowing white flakes, she softly muses on the striking beauty of the winter storm. Behind her, the phantom patriarch listens with a solemn, heavy expression as she confesses her deep-rooted hatred for the snow. A dark, painful truth slips from her lips as she reveals how she once collapsed in the freezing cold and nearly lost her life. A chilling flashback reveals a younger Liliana lying face down in the deep snow, helpless as the white frost slowly buries her. An oppressive despair settles in as she remembers the physical torment of the freezing cold paralyzing her fragile body. Fortunately, a passing priest with a lantern discovered her shivering form just in time, saving her from a frozen grave. With a heartbreaking smile, she admits she wished she had died in that snow, knowing survival meant returning to her family's cruel torment. Gently stroking Momo, she explains that seeing him fight to survive in the cold reminded her so much of her own lonely struggle. With tears glistening in her eyes, she tearfully thanks the little puppy for fighting so hard to stay alive. Her emotional confession strikes a deep chord within the phantom patriarch, triggering a sudden, overwhelming realization. A tragic memory flashes in his mind, revealing a silver-haired boy weeping in agony over a fallen, white-haired woman in the snow. His glowing hand trembles as he reaches out toward Liliana, realizing the profound truth behind his inability to harm her. A cosmic truth dawns upon him, cementing the undeniable reality that their destinies have been inextricably bound from the start. Standing in silent reverence behind her, the powerful patriarch gazes at the fragile girl, fully accepting his role as her guardian. Exhausted from her emotional revelations, Liliana finally slips into a peaceful, deep slumber. Gently manifesting in his true form, the majestic patriarch pulls the warm blanket over her, ensuring she stays safe and protected. His icy gaze burns with absolute clarity as he silently vows to guard her from the darkness no matter the cost. A heavy quiet settles over the room, the lingering shadows of the past slowly yielding to a protective warmth. The tragic memory of the crying boy in the snow echoes one final time, a powerful reminder of the unbreakable vow that now binds them. A forbidden truth finally unravels in the dead of night as a legendary power hesitates to strike down its target. Destiny itself binds their souls together in a cosmic arrangement that cannot be broken. Standing as an unseen protector, the powerful patriarch watches over the girl as she shares a quiet moment with her beloved companion. He silently admits to himself that he found a reflection of his own solitude within her fragile existence. Looking at her peaceful, sleeping face, he recognizes the shared burden of a torturous past that they both carry. He acknowledges the inescapable truth that slaying her was always an impossibility for his heart. His crimson eyes focus entirely on her, locking her image deep within his mind. In this quiet sanctuary, she has become the sole focus of his ancient protective soul. With a soft smile, he accepts that his heart has crossed a line of no return. Yielding completely to the forces of fate, he decides to embrace their shared path. He gently lifts a lock of her hair, cementing a silent, intimate promise. He vows never to let her slip away, dedicating his eternity to her protection. He sits quietly beside her loyal companion, clutching a delicate flower of pure intentions. A mystical radiance emanates from the bloom, carrying a deep, hidden power. Glowing, arcane script manifests on the delicate petal, engraving a secret message onto the blossom. With profound tenderness, he leaves the enchanted flower by her side before stepping back into the shadows. The magical flower delivers a quiet, beautiful birthday blessing to the sleeping girl. Meanwhile, deep within a heavily guarded fortress, a massive magical crystal glows with a restless, powerful light. One of the weary guards yawns, expressing frustration over their endless, seemingly pointless watch. The exhausted guard nudges his silent, gray-haired rookie partner, marveling at his intense focus. The rookie quietly replies that he finds the pulsating magic of the barrier stone absolutely mesmerizing. Just as the tired guard prepares to sneak a quick nap, their stern captain suddenly arrives to check on their progress. Instantly snapping to attention, the panicked rookie salutes the captain, desperately hiding his fatigue. Nothing says "I was totally working" like a frantic high-speed salute. The guard confidently declares that the perimeter is absolutely secure, claiming not even an insect has slipped by. Looking at the peaceful report, the captain contemplates scaling back their high-alert security measures. Breaking his silence, the quiet rookie drops a bombshell, insisting that their target is definitely hiding in the nearby village. While his fellow guard furiously tries to silence him for speaking out of turn, the captain demands an immediate explanation. Standing his ground, the rookie reiterates his claim, prompting the captain to demand his reasoning. He explains his theory, pointing out that the defensive barriers have flagged anomalous magic multiple times. Using his pen, he marks the first suspicious location recorded during the harsh winter. He traces the sequence of detections through the surrounding forest, charting a clear, terrifying pattern. When connected, the coordinates form a flawless geometric shape across the region. Intrigued, the captain leans in closer, eager to understand the significance of this geometric anomaly. The rookie urges them to look past the boundary lines and focus entirely on the dead center of the shape. A sudden wave of pure shock washes over their faces as they realize what lies at the heart of the map. The map reveals that a single, isolated cottage sits perfectly at the epicenter of the magical coordinates. With a chilling coldness, the captain demands to know the identity of the person residing in that cabin. The rookie hesitates briefly, gathering the crucial details of their unsuspected target. Unaware of the danger closing in, Liliana steps outside her cabin, basking in the gorgeous morning light. Kavan's voiceover explains that the home belongs to a quiet woman who recently relocated to the valley. Enjoying her newfound freedom, she happily prepares a meal in the quiet safety of her kitchen. Suddenly, a sharp, authoritative knock echoes through the cozy room, shattering the peaceful silence. Assuming it is just her chaotic friend returning, she cheerfully calls out for them to enter. Her heart instantly drops into her stomach as the voice outside identifies themselves as the elite defense force. Trembling with fear, she slowly opens the door to face the heavily armed soldiers waiting outside. The blonde commander, Dirt, introduces himself and his keen-eyed rookie, Kavan, as they lock eyes with her. Stuttering through her fear, she questions their sudden presence, terrified they have unmasked her true identity as a Sero. Watching from the dim shadows of the cabin, the silver-haired protector narrows his eyes, instantly recognizing the threat they pose to his ward. The commander tries to ease her tension, claiming they are merely conducting a routine investigation. Stealing her resolve, she asks what they want to know, silently vowing to play dumb to survive this deadly interrogation. Facing absolute ruin, she realizes that failing to protect her secret means losing her very life. The blonde commander narrows his eyes, declaring their records classify her as a mere dose. Peering nervously through the doorway, she freezes as he suddenly questions if she is actually a highly ranked Uno. Hidden in the shadows, the silver-haired protector senses danger, realizing their suspicions have reached a critical point. Terrified of being unmasked, she frantically denies his claims and wonders if they are confusing her with forest cannibals. The commander explains that powerful Unos easily conceal their magic, asking if she knows of the wiped-out tribe. He reveals that the entire Kunt tribe vanished in a single night, a feat deemed absolutely impossible. He drops a bombshell, admitting they suspect the dangerous survivors are faking defeat and hiding right there. Clutching her chest in disbelief, she angrily protests the ridiculous accusation of being a forest cannibal. The commander asks if she is the powerful Uno who slaughtered the tribe, but she tearfully protests she was merely their captive. She argues she would never have been captured with that strength, earning a thoughtful hum from the blonde captain. Looking at her boiling pot, the commander silently notes the glaring contradictions in her escape story. Locking eyes with her, he demands to know exactly how she managed to survive an escape. A sudden, sharp bark echoes through the cabin, instantly breaking the suffocating tension of the interrogation. Startled by her dog, she suddenly gasps, realizing she left her boiling kettle unattended on the stove. Recognizing the interruption, Dirt politely bows and decides to take his leave for the day, ordering Kavan to say goodbye. Glaring with intense hatred, Kavan mutters that she is lying, prompting a warning call from his captain. Ignoring his captain's orders to stop, Cannon aggressively storms forward to prove his deduction is correct. Staring down at her little dog, Kavan mockingly asks if she expects them to believe the puppy is the secret Uno. Kavan violently grabs her, demanding she speak the truth as Dirt frantically orders him to release her. A struggle ensues as her oven mitt is knocked away, forcing a terrified scream from her lips. The boiling pot of water slips from her hands, flying dangerously through the air. Reacting on pure instinct, Dirt leaps forward to shield the helpless girl from the scalding splash. Watching from the dark, the silver-haired protector's eyes burn with rage as he prepares to unleash a devastating magical strike. Time seems to slow down as the boiling water descends toward them in a chaotic blur. Ready to annihilate the intruders, his glowing hand trembles on the edge of a deadly transformation. Sizzling steam rises from the wooden floorboards as the scalding water splashes harmlessly across the room. Holding her close to his chest, Dirt glares back in absolute fury, demanding to know what Kavan thinks he is doing. Steam rises from the captain's back, revealing he absorbed the boiling splash to protect her. Looking down at the spilled bucket, Dirt furiously screams at his rookie, demanding if he has completely lost his mind. Refusing to hear any excuses, Dirt roars that Kavan's reckless insubordination almost severely injured an innocent citizen. Turning back to her with gentle concern, Dirt apologizes deeply and asks if she was hurt during the chaos. Bowing politely, he claims his duty is always to protect citizens, apologizing once more for his subordinate's inexcusable disrespect. Relieved but worried, she frantically offers to apply first aid medicine to his burns before a sudden sound stops her. Her heart shatters as she notices her little puppy whimpering on the floor with a painful burn on his back. Panicked, she asks what to do, while Dirt sadly realizes the puppy got burned trying to save her and blames himself. Glistening tears stream down her face as she cradles the injured pup, weeping that he didn't have to risk himself. Gently reaching out his gloved hand, Dirt softly tells her there is absolutely nothing to worry about. A warm, golden, magical light emanates from his palm, gently enveloping the puppy's painful wound. Stunned by the instant healing, she asks how he did it, and he smiles, explaining his magic easily handles minor burns. The puppy whimpers softly in her arms as she frantically checks to see if he is finally all right. Hugging him tight, she tearfully thanks the heavens while warning her loyal pet never to do something so dangerous again. Seeing their beautiful, emotional reunion, Dirt watches with a soft, warm smile of quiet relief. Deciding their business is finished, Dirt turns away and commands the silent Kavan to head back with him. Glaring coldly over his shoulder, Dirt promises to hold Kavan fully accountable for his absurd actions once they return. Grinding his teeth in humiliating defeat, Kavan's face twists with a silent, bitter rage. Shrouded in dark shadows, he reluctantly submits to his commander's authority, whispering his understanding. Deep within the quiet forest, a sudden resounding slap echoes beneath the fading colors of the sunset. Clutching his red, burning cheek, Kavan stands in silence as Dirt coldly declares his profound disappointment in him. Dirt fiercely lectures Kavan for forgetting his duty, warning him that his reckless obsession put an innocent villager in grave danger. Cabin insists the suspect was hiding something, but Dirt questions if his insubordination was justified. A heavy, suffocating silence settles over the forest as the tension reaches its breaking point. Bowing in deep humiliation, Kavan reluctantly admits his short-sightedness to his captain. Shocked to his core, Kavan learns he is officially suspended from duty. Dirt flatly rejects Kavan's excuses, ordering him to return home immediately. Stepping forward, the captain delivers a final, chilling ultimatum to his disgraced subordinate. Dirt warns Kavan that any further missteps will carry severe consequences. With a glaring look, Dirt bans Kavan from ever returning to the defense force. Left alone in the dark, Kavan clenches his fist in absolute rage. Looking back at Liliana's peaceful life, Kavan bitterly blames her for ruining his promotion. Consumed by a dark, vengeful fury, Kavan vows never to forgive her. Inside the cottage, Baylor reacts with utter shock to the news of the guard's visit. Liliana explains how Kavan attacked her and injured her loyal puppy Momo. Furious at the injustice, Baylor slams the table and asks if the puppy is all right. Liliana holds Momo close, grateful that Dirt's healing magic prevented a disaster. Recovering in her arms, the puppy quietly curses his own slow reaction during the magic undoing. Holding her puppy, Liliana remains unaware of the protector's secret thoughts of relief. Turning to Baylor, Liliana admits that something about the situation is deeply bothering her. She points out the glaring contradictions in the story of her rescue from the Kunt tribe. Liliana demands to know who truly saved her if the guards knew nothing of her kidnapping. Caught off guard, Baylor breaks into a nervous sweat as he stammers to find an answer. Liliana quietly wonders if she should reveal her secret identity to her friend. Noticing her distress, Baylor calls out to her with concern. Stealing his resolve, Baylor makes a silent promise to protect his friend. Jumping to his feet, Baylor aggressively declares he will smash Kavan if he dares return. Baylor confidently flexes his arm, claiming he is tough enough to stop any bullies. Liliana stares at his ridiculous display in absolute deadpan disbelief. The overwhelming absurdity of his bravado finally breaks her serious mood. Liliana bursts into bright laughter, affectionately calling Baylor a total idiot. Baylor humorously argues back in embarrassment while Liliana continues to laugh at him. Their cheerful bickering echoes peacefully from the cozy cottage as night begins to fall. High in the trees, an owl keeps watch as darkness blankets the valley. At midnight, the silver-haired protector assumes his human form to watch over Liliana. He gazes softly at his ward as she tosses restlessly in her sleep. Stepping silently to her bedside, the protector stands guard in the moonlight. Leaning down, he softly apologizes for the terrifying danger she faced today. Gently touching her forehead, he releases a soothing wave of magic to ease her mind. Under his protective spell, Liliana finally falls into a peaceful, smiling slumber. Looking out the window, he realizes this valley has become far too dangerous for her. He knows he must return to his duties as patriarch, leaving her vulnerable. He laments his inability to protect her properly while trapped in a puppy's form. He recalls Baylor's proud, silly boast to defend Liliana from any threat. He remembers her bright, genuine smile during their cheerful bickering. A quiet reassurance comforts him, realizing Baylor might actually be of help in his absence. The silver-haired man smiles softly, feeling a momentary sense of peace. Resolving to relocate Liliana to safety, he conjures a magical messaging scroll. Suddenly, he stops as an unexpected magical scroll materializes in his own hand. Unrolling the parchment, he grows suspicious of the sudden contact. His eyes widen in absolute horror as he reads the terrifying news. Back at the estate, soldiers are confronted by the maternal uncle, Azalis Everhart, who demands to know why the patriarch's seat is empty. With his face cloaked in darkness, a sinister conspirator orders an immediate report to be sent directly to the patriarch. Stepping into the starlight, Azalius Everhart proudly announces his grand arrival to seize control. High-stakes urgency strikes as a critical emergency transmission is dispatched to warn the head of household of a gathering storm. The silver-haired patriarch listens in grim silence as the message reveals that the scheming maternal uncle has already discovered his absence. Deep in the mountains, the report warns that Azalis plans to rally the branch families tomorrow morning to overthrow him. Knowing his position is under siege, the patriarch races down the rocky cliffs to return home as quickly as possible. A surge of pure fury overcomes him as he curses his uncle's treacherous timing. Looking back at the valley, he realizes his enemy has finally initiated a deadly play for the throne. He knows bringing Liliana back to the estate now would be walking her straight into a den of wolves. Speeding through the night, he resolves to buy enough time to secure both of their futures. He remembers the looming threat of Cave-In and the Barrier Tower, realizing he is fighting a war on multiple fronts. Looking down at his sleeping ward, he worries that his defensive enchantments won't be enough to keep her safe. He gazes at the cozy basket set aside for the white puppy. He begins weaving a protective spell, infusing the puppy's resting place with a vibrant surge of red mana. The magical enchantment settles over the sleeping puppy, designed to shield her until his eventual return. The next morning, Liliana happily enters the room with a fresh plate of breakfast for her pet. She watches with absolute delight as the energetic little puppy eagerly devours the meal. Smiling warmly, she scoops up the puppy to apply healing medicine to his wounds. She frantically turns the puppy over, searching for the painful injuries he suffered. To her utter bewilderment, she discovers that every single burn mark has completely vanished overnight. The little puppy proudly shakes his coat, completely healed and full of life. Meanwhile, a stealthy intruder sprints silently through the dense forest surrounding her cottage. Peering from behind a tree, Kavan confirms he has successfully reached his target location undetected. Gritting his teeth in resentment, the disgraced guard refuses to accept his punishment and vows to take matters into his own hands. He stares at the isolated cottage, convinced that the legendary companion is hidden somewhere inside. Cloaking himself in temporary invisibility magic, Kavan stealthily creeps toward the cabin while his rivals are away. Confident that his prey is cornered, a sinister smile creeps onto his face as he prepares to strike. He quietly presses his face against the window lattice to spy on the unsuspecting girl. Inside, Liliana stands draped in a simple white towel as warm steam rises around her. Kavan's cheeks flush with sudden embarrassment as he realizes he has walked in on her bathing. Squinting through the thick steam, he desperately tries to spot any physical marks near her collarbone. As the mist parts slightly, he catches sight of a distinct crimson crescent moon pendant resting against her skin. Kavan's eyes widen in absolute shock as the visual evidence confirms his wildest suspicions. He remembers the ancient legends regarding that specific crimson crescent moon pattern. A malicious grin spreads across his face as he realizes he has finally found the fabled Sero. Back at the estate, the silver-haired patriarch is formally welcomed back by his loyal butler. The master immediately asks for his guard, Karo, while heading up the grand staircase. He orders his staff to prepare for an immediate confrontation with his uncle after he changes. The heavy doors click shut as he retreats into his private dressing chambers. He quickly unbuttons his traveling clothes to prepare for the meet. Shedding his shirt, the patriarch reveals his powerful build and exceptional physique. He begins dressing in a clean shirt to present a flawless, commanding appearance. Suddenly, a knock sounds at the door as Karo requests permission to enter, which the master grants. Karo bursts into the room in a state of absolute panic, crying out in relief at her lord's safe return. The half-dressed patriarch warmly acknowledges his guard's exhausting efforts during his absence. Realizing she walked in on her master changing, Karo covers her face in sheer embarrassment, earning a sharp scolding from the patriarch. Fastening his dark shirt, the patriarch calmly inquires about his treacherous uncle's current whereabouts. When Karo asks if his destined companion accompanied him back, he quietly admits that she has not arrived yet. Karo warns him that his political enemies will exploit this vulnerability to challenge his claim to the throne. The patriarch stares out in silent contemplation, knowing his uncle will stop at nothing to expose his secret. The silver-haired patriarch dismisses Karo's worries with absolute confidence. Karo, the blonde guard, nervously agrees with his lord's logic. Karo silently marvels at the overwhelming pressure radiating from the patriarch. A voice explains the legendary radiant beauty of the unique Lumina bellflower. The speaker plucks the flower, hinting at a hidden tragic price for its allure. Azaleas Everhart, the family godfather, reveals the tragic vulnerability of the beautiful blossom. He explains that the flower relies entirely on a single highly selective butterfly for survival. Azalea crushes the petals, comparing the flower's pitiful, fleeting existence to the fate of an Uno. His son, Quilt, stands in tense, silent hesitation before his father. A heavy, chilling silence falls over the garden. Azalea delivers a cold, biting warning to his son not to live as an empty shell. Quilt tries to protest, but his father cuts him off as their guest finally arrives. A stern, commanding voice warns the uncle against carelessly plucking the garden's flowers. Azalea greets the newly arrived head of the household with a mocking smile. The young patriarch stands tall, meeting his uncle's gaze with absolute composure. Azalea claims he deeply missed the peaceful atmosphere of the family estate during his absence. He feigns absolute delight at enjoying tea in such a beautiful, familiar setting. The patriarch flatly questions his uncle's sudden outburst of affection. The patriarch dryly notes his complete ignorance of his uncle's supposed love for the estate. The patriarch delivers a sharp verbal blow, pointing out his uncle's hasty departure upon his succession. Azalea quickly makes excuses, claiming his departure was purely a coincidental journey to find Asura. The patriarch raises a smug smile, calling out his uncle's desperate attempt to rally the branch families. The patriarch pressures his uncle to explain if those treasonous actions were also mere coincidences. The patriarch openly mocks his uncle's pathetic attempt to usurp his position as family head. An overwhelming wave of tension suffocates the entire garden. Adalis defends his actions as his duty, noting the patriarch's lengthy 3-month absence. Azalea boldly accuses the patriarch of a severe neglect of duty for abandoning his post. Azalea maliciously whispers that the patriarch is a ticking time bomb bound to drop dead without Asura. Azalea openly questions if a dying, neglectful ruler deserves to lead the family. The patriarch calmly mutters that his uncle's greed never changes. The patriarch firmly declares that his uncle will never sit on the throne because he also lacks a Asura. Azalea proudly boasts of his perfect health despite surviving nearly 50 years without a Asura. Azalea taunts his nephew, claiming the young ruler can already feel his own life force withering away. Azalea mockingly demands to know if his dark deduction is correct. The patriarch quietly acknowledges the brutal truth about the shortened lifespan of an Uno without a Asura. Suddenly, the patriarch rises as a massive, menacing red aura explodes from his body. The patriarch cold-bloodedly warns his uncle of the unfathomable power an Uno unlocks upon finding their Asura. Azalea is completely crushed by the overwhelming magical pressure, struggling to comprehend what is happening. The patriarch coldly decides to ignore his uncle's treasonous insolence for the day. He delivers a final, chilling warning that leaves his uncle completely frozen in fear. Meanwhile, far away from the power struggles, Liliana enjoys a peaceful morning outside her cozy cottage. Liliana happily plays a game of fetch with her energetic little puppy, Momo. She warns her playful pet not to wander too far as she quickly hangs up her laundry. The rolling ball suddenly stops as it bumps against an unexpected visitor's boot. A mysterious man bends down to retrieve the puppy's toy. The stranger kindly asks the curious little puppy if the toy belongs to him. The visitor offers a soft apology for his past actions while returning the ball to the excited pup. Hearing her puppy bark, Liliana turns around with a look of mild concern. Liliana suddenly freezes in absolute shock as the visitor steps forward to greet her. The sinister intruder reveals his face with a chilling grin, calling her by her secret name, leaving us on the edge of our seats. The peaceful morning shatters instantly as a sinister shadow corners the unsuspecting girl, prompting Liliana to frantically command her puppy to flee inside. The small white puppy runs through the grass, wearily questioning what brings this disgraced man to their doorstep. Smiling disarmingly, Kavan raises his hands to reassure her, claiming he only returned to apologize for his past actions. Liliana firmly rejects his excuses and orders him to leave, but Kavan persists, stepping closer and demanding she listen to a proper apology. Backing into her cottage, Liliana yells one final warning for him to get lost. Terrified by an overwhelming sense of dread, Liliana desperately tries to slam the wooden door shut. Suddenly, a firm hand grips the doorframe, and Kavan menacingly commands her to stand still and listen. With a chilling, shadowed gaze, Kavan corners her through the cracked doorway, directly accusing her of lying. Kavan drops a devastating bombshell by exposing her secret identity as a Sero, leaving a panicked Liliana to frantically deny the truth. Kavan laughs mockingly at her persistent denial, stepping forcefully into the cottage as she stumbles back in fear. Liliana screams for him to leave, terrified by the impossible mystery of how he uncovered her secret identity. Kavan demands she prove her innocence to force his departure, leaving her with no choice but to ask what he expects her to do. Tapping his own chest with a sinister grin, Kavan demands that she reveal her hidden mark. Realizing he already knows the truth for a fact, Liliana gathers her courage and flatly refuses his demand. Kavan advances aggressively, questioning her hesitation, while Liliana desperately argues that she has no obligation to prove her innocence. Pushing aside her confusion, Liliana resolves to focus solely on surviving the immediate danger. Kavan uses his authority as a guard to deliver a thinly veiled threat, urging her to cooperate while he is still playing nice. Stealing her resolve, Liliana prepares to unleash her magic to quickly neutralize the threat and escape with her puppy. Liliana boldly asks what will happen if she refuses, reminding herself that this corrupt guard is nothing compared to the monster she survived before. Recalling how she defeated a cannibal by releasing a massive burst of mana, Liliana plans to use the exact same strategy against him. A chilling, malicious grin spreads across Kavan's face as he issues his final ultimatum. Summoning every ounce of her hidden power, Liliana prepares to unleash a devastating burst of magical energy. As Kavan lunges forward to take her mark by force, Liliana releases her blinding magic in a desperate bid to protect herself and escape. A colossal explosion of pure magical energy erupts from the cottage, lighting up the entire valley in a stunning high-stakes cliffhanger.